Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Modern Squid Podcast, where we get to know the people behind our favorite riders and brands. On this week's episode, I have Amanda Zito. She's known as Blind Thistle on Instagram and as the Magpie Flies on YouTube. We had such a fantastic time talking during this episode that we went very, very long. If you haven't noticed the length of this episode yet, it's basically 4 hours. Now, I'd like to think that the entire 4 hours is absolutely fantastic and fun. Hopefully you guys think the same. If you don't make it through in one sitting, I don't blame you, but I do hope that you listen to the whole thing because there are so many good stories that she shares during this podcast. And with that, let's get into it.
Every live stream, so there's always something that doesn't work the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, and I just bought a gimbal too for my DSLR. And I've been normally I'm like right on top of playing with new toys, but I've been so reluctant to take everything off this setup and put it on a whole new setup, only to put it right back again.
Yeah.
That the gimbal's kind of been sitting over on the side of my bedroom over there. Waiting for me to get the motivation to disconnect everything and get it all installed on the gimbal. So
yes, I feel that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am really excited that you were, that you agreed to come on the show because I've been following you basically since I got into motorcycles. You were one of the first accounts that I followed online because
awesome.
you combine a couple things that I really enjoy. One is art and then the other is motorcycles. So, and then you do some photography and stuff too, which photography is a huge passion of mine. So
my brother is really the photographer. I just kind of do it for social media.
Well, whether you do it for necessity or for love, either way, I appreciate it. I like good photography.
I mean, I enjoy doing it. I just my brother's skill is far above mine. I can barely use program and that kind of stuff versus my brother who always shoots a manual. So I always feel inadequate.
They have other settings besides manual?
Yeah, I know. See?
I'm part of a bunch of different, not only Facebook groups, but I've got some good photography friends of mine who we kind of form our own little group to kind of critique our work and talk about things. And one of the jokes is always that P is for professional. On the dial.
I approve of this. Yes.
Just throw it in the P setting for professional. It's all in good fun though, because when I first started out, I started out with point and shoot cameras that were film as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of how I got into it. And being broke because I'm a kid. And having a camera where it's okay, every single shot has to count because not only am I paying for this film, but I have to pay to get it developed.
Yes. My grandmother and I used to go around yard sales and we would collect old film cameras when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And I was the family photographer because when I was little, nobody would pay attention to me. So grandma would give me the camera and I would take photos of everybody because nobody stiffens up because you're pointing a lens at them.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. And even the art thing was inspired by my closest brother. He used to draw a lot when we were kids before he took up photography, and he's 6 years older than me. So I would come home, I was in primary school and he would come home and teach me everything that he learned in his high school art classes so that he could cement it in his brain.
Yeah.
So I started drawing because of him, and I wanted to be a jockey first, and that's a long story. Anyway, when I was about in 5th grade, I decided that art was going to be my thing. And then my brother went to art school. So I've essentially just been following his path this whole time. I just happen to know how to work social media a little bit better than he does.
Yeah. It's a skill, it's a skill. People don't realize it. Okay. So now I do want to backtrack a little bit because you touched upon the topic of being a jockey, and I've heard, I've been listening to your podcast and reading articles and things like that about you, kind of prepping for this whole interview. And so I've heard the story a number of times about wanting to be a jockey. Someone from California moved into your school and was like, no, you got to be tiny to be a jockey.
Yes.
But it makes me curious. Have you ever considered, since now the Iron Horse has taken over for a real horse, have you ever considered racing motorcycles?
No.
Really?
No. I have the motorcycle thing. Backtracking. Starting with like the wanting to be a jockey was just to be close to horses, to get paid to ride horses. And I didn't like the idea of having to take, being a Montanan, like no offense to dude ranchers or anybody who makes that their profession, because I think that's really cool. You're getting people out into the woods riding a horse that wouldn't be otherwise. I just never, growing up as like a broke ranch kid, I didn't like the idea of taking a bunch of rich city folk around on a horse. Again, like, I just nothing about that sounded fun to me. It's like, obviously I have like a different opinion of like that whole thing now, but as a kid, that just sounded like the last thing that I ever wanted to do. So that's where like, I was like, well, other things that I could get paid to be around horses, jockey. And of course, like I had never been exposed to horse racing as a kid. All I knew it was like what was on TV and that kind of stuff. So I had no idea like there were trainers behind the scenes that were actually spending all that time with the horse. So in reality, I probably would have wanted to be a trainer more than anything. But yeah, and when that like kind of killed it when I was like in 5th or 6th grade. So it wasn't like I had a bunch of time to do a bunch of research into this profession that I had been saying that I wanted to do since I was a tiny child. I just wanted to be around horses. And when I was in high school, we ended up with a couple of horses. I did have a horse when I was like 8, but we only had her for a little bit of time. And we had to get rid of her because mom and dad came home and found me riding her without supervision. So, and so when I was in high school, we got Tennessee Walkers, and that like just like fed my soul so much. And when I moved to Portland, I couldn't bring them with me. That was the spark to get into horses, because I was going back to Montana like pretty much twice a month at that point in a Oldsmobile, and it was $300 every time I came home. And it's a lot of money for a broke college student, to $600 a month on just gas getting back and forth to Montana. So like the motorcycle became more of a gateway to travel than anything else. So I totally get like, why aren't you racing, Amanda? You want to be a jockey.
That makes perfect sense though, because
Yeah.
like you said, it wasn't about the racing, it was about being around the horses. But I am curious, I guess, when you moved to Oregon and you started going to school, at that point, you're old enough to kind of figure out the different things, the different professions that are related to horses. So did you just not consider trying to find a job that would let you interact with horses when you got to Oregon? Or was it more a matter of time?
I tried.
Okay.
The thing about like Portland is that like a majority of like the horse community, people who own horses, the industry around horses in the Portland area is very family centered, and it's about who you know. And coming to Portland, and my only like contact here was my grandpa, and he's in the construction business. He's a contractor. So he didn't know anybody who has horses or, does that kind of stuff. And at one point when I was like a junior in college, like I was trying to find a summer job. And this is before I started tattooing. I like went to Sauvie Island. There's a lot of horse ranches out there who like do like training and that kind of stuff for rich people. And I went to every single stable, made sure I talked to a person face to face, like, cause I was like, well, this is obvious. The problem is that I'm over the phone. So if they see me, I'm pretty like good at making people like, I don't know. There's a word for it. Charismatic isn't what I would say, but that's the closest thing I can think to. Like if I'm in front of you, we're face to face, I'm pretty good at getting you to see my side, essentially.
Sure.
And so I went face to face to like all of these stables on Sauvie Island, all of these just like boarding stables, like in Oregon City, and they're kind of the outskirts of Portland. And every single one of them told me no. they are either like the rescue stables outside of Oregon City. They're purely volunteers, so I wouldn't have been making any kind of money, and they demanded more time than I was able to give and still be able to do a job. And then all of the stables off Sauvie Island were like it's all in the family. They don't pay anybody who's not family, kind of thing. So I tried. It's not for a lack of trying.
Okay.
And then like the motorcycle thing kind of took off. Well, I started tattooing. I thought that was what I was going to do. And that kind of took a downward spiral. And then the motorcycle thing kind of took off after I did the pilgrimage. So
do you still tattoo?
I do not still tattoo. I finished my apprenticeship, and I quit that job to get away from my toxic mentor. And that's when I did the pilgrimage. And I spent all summer working on my bike, and came back and I was like, you know what? I'm good at this. Like, this is really satisfying, and I want to get a job being a mechanic. And I ended up being a lot tech at a Harley-Davidson dealership here in Portland. And at the time that I was hired, their tech manager didn't think that girls should be mechanics. So I got stuck being a glorified bike washer for about 6 months until they got rid of my position. And that's when I started doing events, because their general manager found out that I could draw and that I did videos and that kind of stuff. So I took over like their social media and organizing their events for like 2 years before they got rid of me, because they couldn't afford me anymore.
Yeah. So what about, I think you went and worked for Triumph too, right? Or was that the same dealership?
That's the same dealership. Yeah. They're a Harley and Triumph dealership here in Portland. I know.
Okay.
Kind of opposite brands there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to make more sense to put things in one building so you're not paying for as much space individually, I guess. But
totally.
you know, at the same time, I guess they're competitors, so maybe it
yeah.
doesn't make
Well,
as much
like they're
sense.
competitors, and they're just like different niches, really. Like Triumph has like the vintage classic, and then also like the ADV market, or the tip end of the ADV market, for people getting into it, not necessarily people who are going to go hardcore. But and that was kind of the thought process of the owner. I get along really well with the owner. He's amazing. We're both Montanans, so we kind of bonded over that. And he was like, well, I would drive around a lot on my Harley, and then I would see all these dirt roads, and I'd be like, what's down there? And kind of like, but you know, Harleys can do it, but it's not comfortable, and it's kind of nerve-wracking if you take a 30 grand bike down a dirt road.
Yeah. Well, you just need a sporty with some knobbies, right?
Yeah, right. So I think that was part of the reason they took on Triumph, because like the Tiger and even like the Scrambler is a very capable bike.
Well, now Harley's going to have its own ADV bike, so
yeah,
it's going to be exciting.
Gonna be interesting.
I think, you know, everyone's aesthetics are different, but for me, I hate the headlight on it. I was just talking to Moto Bob last week, and he actually really likes the front end, but for me, it's the weakest part of the bike. From the side, I think it's a really beautiful bike. But that headlight is I just don't understand it. It's probably more functional though, right? Because it's so wide, it's got to light up the ground in front of you a bit better.
Yes and no. It's hard to tell, because so much of like whether or not it's effective has more to do with the bulbs and the shape of the light. Like, I think just like whoever was designing the Pan America was the same person who designed the Road Glide.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it's functional at the very least. Because I like.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I know that a lot of the motorcycle industry is like, what is Harley doing? Blah, blah, blah. I think that it's an excellent thing that they're stretching out, and like every other brand has like multiple niches within their brand. Like, and Harley is one of the only ones that like is strictly cruisers. So I think it's about time that they kind of stretched out and started doing other things.
It's interesting because I am of two minds on the situation, because on one hand, I think that there is a valid case to be made for doing one thing and just doing it so much better than everyone else that you dominate that niche. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, they're not dominating that niche because there's a lot of good cruisers out there. So at that point, you're faced with two choices. You either diversify to get more people to buy your products, or you double down and start making the absolute best cruisers on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough.
And when Indian started coming back, I feel like that was really when Harley should have started branching out. Because Indian has been like nailing their marketing game. Oh my God.
They have, yeah, they're embracing social media, I think, sooner than a lot of the other companies, and
Yeah.
in a better way than some of them as well. I mean, Triumph, I think, is starting to get on that bandwagon too, when
Yes.
they
Yeah.
grab influencers and bring them out, people who are actually riding instead of just, Jason Momoa, who's pretty and rides a motorcycle.
Yes.
Nothing against Jason Momoa, but like they obviously were looking for a pretty face to throw on a campaign, which,
You could argue the benefits and the not so benefits of
At
that.
least they're not putting all their eggs in that basket, because they've been doing things like working with Queen Sit and a few other people to sort of
Yeah.
become more like Harley ambassadors, that are
Yes.
a more relatable face, I think, to the brand than a Jason Momoa. But,
Yes. And like Harley, I think like 2 years ago, they tried to do like an internship program where they tried to start that like social, like trying to make a social media influencer that's Harley like loyal essentially. But they kind of, I don't know, in my opinion, they should have picked influencers that were already established than trying to create influencers who had no experience making videos and that kind of stuff. I was really excited when they announced it because they were going to pick people who had never ridden before. They were going to give them all the tools they needed to get started riding, which in theory would have made a great campaign if those people had been experienced in documenting their experiences. Instead, they took people who were like fresh out of college or fresh out of like some other job market and like threw them into this. And some of them did do the videos for like the first like month or something, but not the whole summer like they were contracted to, which is very interesting to me.
I'd seen some videos about that saying that the effort itself, while it was going on, was pretty successful, but then Harley
Yeah.
dropped the ball by just completely stopping at the end,
Yes.
just like,
Yeah.
okay, we did this little experiment, thank you guys, move on your way, when they could have just kept growing it and growing it.
Yes.
And
yeah, if they instead of having them contracted for a year, it should have been like a longer period, something that could have been refreshed. It seemed like a lot of effort and money that was kind of put down the drain for like 3 months, and that was about it. I think one of their influencers, like Cowboy something, Space Cowboy or something like that, he's like grown pretty well on Instagram, so he's making a name for himself. And as far as I can tell, he's still Harley loyal, but I don't know. I haven't checked in a while.
yeah, there was a guy who just did a follow-up interview with basically all of the people who were involved in that enterprise or whatever.
Yeah.
And some of them have really gone on to do great things.
Mhm.
And a lot of them still speak really fondly of Harley. They just were like, well, we tried to work with them afterwards. We put forward some proposals and this and that, and they just kind of let it die.
Yeah, part of that is because right after that program, Harley fired all their marketing team and totally started fresh. So we experienced a bit of the brunt of that at the dealership when they just got rid of everybody, and it was like radio silence for like a month, which is like ages in dealership time. And they just started fresh, and it seemed like the fresh team really didn't like make an effort to pick up on any of the efforts that the old marketing team was even trying to do.
Which there's some validity to that.
That's, of course, just my skewed perspective as somebody who was at the dealership when that happened.
But at the end of the day, your job needs to be effective, right? And if you look at the numbers going on at Harley, marketing is probably not the only problem they had, but it was definitely a significant one with the type of year-over-year declines that they were seeing and the consistency of it.
Yeah.
It's like you can have a bad year or two, but if you have a bunch of them strung together, something's broken.
I think my main criticism was like they could have done a better job of transitioning the marketing team rather than just like flat out firing everybody who had any kind of knowledge or experience about what had been going on thus far, and then just trying to start fresh with people and be like, let's just ignore everything that we've done in the 2 years that we've been trying to fix this problem.
It's almost like they had leadership issues over there, right?
Yeah, I don't mean to like talk bad about Harley. Like I think every motorcycle like mega head in the industry is trying to figure out what to do with the next generation right now. So,
I think that every single motorcycle company, you're right, is in the same boat in that they need to find a way forward. I think the difference is that some of them have been more successful than others. And for me, I feel a little bit easy. It's a little easier for me to criticize Harley because I love Harley. I own a Harley. I feel like I'm part of Harley versus taking shots at some other company like Honda or something where I've got no stake in it. And it would be weird for me to just constantly bag on Honda,
Yeah.
But Harley, like all my criticisms come from love because I want them to succeed. I love Harley. I want it to keep going.
Yeah, it's like for a company that has been around this long, like American based, can't necessarily say American made anymore, but American based, like I want them to succeed. Like, of course, I think that not just marketing, but I think that they're suffering from a path that they started down like in the 90s, essentially. And the image that they put forth that like put themselves in the hearts of so many baby boomers is also the image that so many of like my generation and Gen Zs and are kind of like, I don't want to be a part of that,
Maybe they're just ahead of their time though, because you know how everything kind of comes around.
Totally.
And like one year low rise jeans are in, the next the next generation it's high rise, like the mom jeans, and then you like high waters are considered dorky, and the next thing you know, capris are big and famous, and it's just to use jeans as an example, like everything kind of is cyclical. So maybe they're just like, if we just waited out long enough, having a bad image is going to be in style again.
Who knows? Nobody can predict what is going to come next.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and I definitely feel for the people that have to make those kinds of decisions. But they got Zeitz now. I've got a lot of confidence in that guy. So hopefully,
I am honestly one of the few people who are very excited about the LiveWire. I'm very stoked about it. I know, like oh my god, everybody in our dealership when they announced that they were gonna like make us sell one of the electric bikes and we were going to have to install plugs and that kind of stuff, everybody on the sales floor really groaned. And I was like, no, this is exciting. Like, this is the next thing,
For me, I think that, and I talked to other people about this too. This is, if anyone listens to the podcast, they're going to hear this again. But I think a LiveWire would be fun to ride.
Yeah.
Occasionally, but I would never ever own one because it doesn't have anything about a bike that appeals to me. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't shake. It doesn't smell. It doesn't. You don't shift gears. Like I feel like I'd be riding a very souped up grocery store electric cart if I was riding. Like, what is the point at that point? You're not even riding it. Like you're barely riding it. All you're doing is turning a throttle and trying not to fall over.
I mean, you still have the thrill of acceleration. Like, have you ridden a moped before?
But that's the thing. Like, I'm not a speed demon either. So for me, that's why I like Harleys. You get that low end torque, and it's kind of fun to speed up real fast. But I don't have to worry about getting a felony or running over a kid because I'm 150.
I think that the LiveWire is just the like first generation of a series of electric bikes, just kind of like Alta, which they purchased to get the technology to make the LiveWire. I wish that they would have like taken on a lot more of like the bikes that Alta already had established because I thought they were super cool. But like Zero and Cake, oh my god, I want a Cake electric dirt bike so bad. Like, and I think the electric market is really going to find its stride in the dirt bike market because so much of that appeals to me personally. I know that a lot of like diehard like two-strokers hate the idea of an electric bike, but for me, like so much of getting out into the woods and the reason that I have an adventure bike is to spend time in nature, and I love the idea of it being quiet and being able to hear everything else in the woods instead of just my bike. And I like that I'm not disturbing things.
But the problem, I guess, is that with dirt bikes, like right now you guys can have a van, an SUV, some other vehicle, bring not only the bikes, but bring a bunch of fuel with you too.
Yeah.
And then ride around for a whole like camping trip, however long your camping trip is on dirt bikes. What are you going to do with electric dirt bike unless you've got some gigantic arrays of solar panels, which are super inefficient for converting, light to energy? Like, how are you going to keep them all powered over one day? So it's like you get one day of dirt biking and then they sit next to your RV or whatever and you do other things.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of people who do that, like if dirt biking is their thing, they end up building out their vans. So they have a ton of like Battle-Born batteries or like some kind of battery system hooked up in their van already. So it's not unheard of for you to be able to charge it and keep going. And I think that the technology is still very new. Like, of course, it's going to be short. Like thinking about like the first cell phones, like you could barely go like 2 or 3 hours, like without having to charge it,
Yeah.
So I think it's just the beginning of that technology. And as it progresses and as more people take onto it, like it will get better. Like I have a phone now that will go 2 days without having to charge it, and like, yeah.
That's a valid point. I mean, technology definitely improves. I just, if you look at battery technology over the last like 5 years, it seems like it's sort of tapered off. Because most technology's got that exponential curve, right? It's like it's kind of like crappy, and then it just gets better and better and better. Battery technology, though, it seems like the chemistry has sort of gotten as far as we can at the moment. So unless we get someone who's like a genius and able to just come up with this breakthrough, I think it's going to be a little while longer before we have. But maybe the charging systems are the way to go, right? So maybe the batteries themselves,
but also the motor itself become more efficient in using that energy, kind of like the way that they do the new laptops. Like maybe the batteries are the same as the last generation, but the way that they made the operating system and all the technology in that laptop uses that power more efficiently. So battery life is longer.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. Well, we'll wait and see. I think it'd be fun because you're right. I do think that the quiet would be a huge benefit for outdoor activities and things. I was listening to some clips of the Long Way Up with Ewan McGregor, and they're talking about blowing out poor people's not poor people as in like they don't have money, but like I'm sympathizing with them that he's going in and like blowing out their circuits by trying to charge his bike.
Yeah.
They're really pushing that technology to its limit right now, I think, with this trip. So I'm gonna be
but I mean, like Ewan and Charlie have like also in the past been that like thing that kickstarts the market. Like BMW, like GSs were definitely a thing in like the ADV market before Long Way Round, but not nearly what it is now as a result of that series and the amount of people that they've inspired to go around the world.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's why I was stoked at their Harleys, because I was like, yes, I knew what they did for BMW. And I was like, as much as I wouldn't want to own, a live wire, I would love nothing more than a bunch of other people to be like, I want a live wire and immediately go out and buy one.
Yes.
Because it supports Harley and I hope that it works. And I think that actually the live wire has got a really great place. I think as a sport bike, it makes a lot of sense because no one wants to do long distance on a sports bike unless you're Ewan McGregor.
Exactly.
Because they're just not comfortable enough, Actually, that's kind of a lie, because I know there's a woman making her way through.
Round the World Roxy.
Is that her?
Yes, Round the World Roxy.
Is it the Firebird? Yeah. I mean, I think she's kind of crazy for that, but she's enjoying it. So
well, and like Teapot One went around the world on a sport bike too. I don't know if you know who Teapot One is.
I follow him. Yeah.
And I think that like people like that is just evidence of like any bike is an adventure bike if you try hard enough. The best bike to do the adventure is the one that you have now.
Yeah. But you got to be really dedicated, because the ergonomics are just so. I've got a bad back. I've injured it a number of times, and I couldn't imagine being hunched over like that and with all the weight on my wrists.
Well, you're not supposed to put all your weight on your wrists. You're supposed to grip the tank with your knees.
Yeah, but how long? You know what I mean? Like eventually you're going to alternate, because even, like, the muscles on the inside of your thighs are going to get tired, and you're going to just start like leaning, and then you're going to have to like grip again and then lean again. And
Well, I think that's why that's why he's so muscular, right?
Who needs a thigh master when you can just drive a few thousand miles on a sport bike?
But I mean, like, everybody told me that like doing the amount of mileage I did on Lazarus was stupid too. But I did it, you know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I say that I wouldn't want to do it on a sport bike, but I would never tell someone they're stupid for doing it. You know, it's their life. Like, you do what you want. If you think that you're going to be comfortable on a sport bike for however many, months, do it.
Yeah. I think it's just the like making the accommodations for whatever bike you choose to do. Like, if you're going to do like 2,000 miles on like Coleman, there are people who do adventure motorcycling on like those little Colemans that are like 150 cc's. There's no suspension. You just like reduce your expectation for how many miles you're going to do in a day, and you make time to take breaks and stretch. That's the other thing. Like, the more that I like talk to people who are trying to do longer miles, the more that I'm like, dude, just take a break and stretch. Your body needs to move, like.
Yeah. Well, and your brain needs a break too. So
yeah. Like, talking to people who are like Iron Butt Association like members, right? That they do that like every single year. There was a sales guy at the Harley-Davidson dealership that he attended the Iron Butt rally every single year. And talking to people who do that, like long distance is their jam, like the key to doing more miles isn't going faster, it's going slower and pacing yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think Whit Mesa just finished it, and she had like all these stops planned out on her paper, right? Like, she knew like 200, 250 miles or whatever, stop, either get gas, get something to eat, rest, take a nap, whatever you need. And she ended up doing it. So yeah, I think
she's awesome. I love her.
Personally,
her energy is amazing.
Oh, she definitely is. She's so fun to watch on YouTube, and she's super nice. And I'm always like, I'm floored at how much time she gets. And I wanted to ask her about it one day. Maybe I'll try to interview her as well. Like, how does she have time with kids to get out and do all this stuff by herself? You know what I mean?
I know that like this last trip that like she's posting the videos from, where she went to Tetons and South Dakota and that kind of stuff. She left the kids with their grandparents.
Yeah, but how often can you really do that? I wonder. I don't know.
I guess it depends on the grandparents.
Yeah. It's definitely, one of the main reasons I'm never having kids is I enjoy the freedom to be able to do what I want when I want to do it. I don't have to worry about making sure that some small people in my household don't die. So.
Oh, totally. I think like Wit is amazing though, and we need more women like her creating content, like proving that like you can be a mom and you can like be a family person and still get out and have adventures. Like, I don't think she's getting out and doing like what I'm doing as often as I'm doing it, because she has a family, and but she's still evidence like you can do it. You just have to make it a priority.
Yeah.
I got to stay with her on my loop of the US, and like we stayed up until like 1 o'clock in the morning talking. I felt awful because she had to get up at like 6 a.m. and get the kids ready for school. But like, she wasn't telling me like, hey, you need to go to bed now because I have to go to bed and do these other things. Like, she like makes it a priority to take those opportunities when they're offered, essentially. She's just so cool, and like she's a professional photographer, which I just find super inspiring. I
think she does weddings, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
She works her butt off.
Of course, yeah. It's hard work. I did one wedding, I hated it, so I admire anyone who can do that. It's too much chaos, and if you're good with organizing chaos and making sure people stay on task, it's a great profession because you can make a lot of money at it. And especially if you like large groups of people, but I'm more of an introvert anyway. Yeah. So just the fact that there's a large group of people there already makes it more of a struggle for me. And then trying to deal with people who are going through a lot of stress during that day, but you need things to move along. It was just, I did totally a favor to a friend, and I said, don't refer me any more weddings, please.
I'm an introvert, but I have my moments where I can be extroverted, which is why like I love doing events, because like that's like I can be like spend all this time by myself planning everything and just like my alone time. And then I have like this one big burst of like being enthusiastic and talking to literally everybody and that kind of stuff. This year at Rocky Mountain Roll, we added another day, and like I like felt it. I got partway through the day on Saturday, and like I had to go take a nap and have like alone time because I was like expelling so much more energy than usual. Normally it's like a 3-day run, and like everybody leaves Sunday morning, so it's like really only 2 days of me having to like be up and about and talk to everybody and make sure that everybody's having a good time and that nobody needs anything. And it being like 3.5 days essentially, because a lot of people who got to stay until Monday then leave until like the middle of the day, which is totally fine. Like that's why we made it 4 days. But it definitely took its toll on me.
How did that go this year with the whole world situation that we have? Was this prior to that, or is it
surprisingly well? We discussed it, like not doing it, because we were concerned because my dad is high risk. And the more that we got closer, the more that I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be bringing these people from all over the country. Is this responsible? I don't know. And as we got closer and closer, a lot of people were like canceling, and I was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do it this year. And we got to about a month out, and things were looking a lot better in Montana specifically. And they finally did a mask mandate in Missoula, which made me feel a lot better about bringing a lot of other people into the state. And a lot is subjective. Like only 40 people showed up. It's not like Babes Right Out where like if they had continued doing it, like 1,200 people would have showed up in a tiny town.
Yeah.
And everybody was really good. Like I sent a letter to everybody asking them to like mask up if we're going to be in like close proximity. If you're really close to anybody, wear a mask when they checked in, so that like the exposure for my mom and my dad was minimal. All that kind of stuff. And everybody was amazing. And I think that everybody who came really just wanted a place, like they didn't have to talk about what was going on in the world right now, and like an opportunity to take a break from all of the crazy. And so everybody was really great about keeping their distance. Everybody was amazing about keeping their hands washed, like sanitizing. And I made sure that I cleaned the bathrooms every hour on the hour, even though there was only like 40 of us. And nobody got sick. And it was a good time. And I got really great feedback from everybody who was there about how wonderful it was to be in like that group. And we were all outside as well. It's not like we were in a building or anything like that. About how wonderful everybody was about respecting everybody's space and their comfort level. A lot, like as far as like being precautious and that kind of stuff. I was really impressed. I'm always really impressed every year for Rocky Mountain Roll because we keep it so small. Everybody, you have no opportunity to be anonymous. And I think that goes a long way with everybody being respectful towards each other. And it also just makes a really great vibe because everybody gets to talk to each other. You know, you can't create a clique in a group of like 50 people. Like,
yeah. So how many people generally come out to the Rocky Mountain Roll?
First year was 18. Because I gave everybody like 2 months notice. But we sold like 80 tickets because I told everybody that like I would only do it again if we could cover insurance. So a ton of people bought tickets with the intention not even to go that year, just so that I would do it again. And second year we had 76 people. And that was probably max capacity for the field that we were in at that time. We made plans the next year, like, okay, if it's going to be huge again, we can expand into this other field because we have 40 acres on that property. I had just like kind of picked one bull pasture because it was easy to maintain. And the next year there was 9 of us.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, maybe that was it. It was a one-time thing and I won't do it again. And mom and dad are like, well, you can't quit. You don't know if it was just a bad year. You have to do it again. And I was like, okay, like this is like my mom and dad had to be talked into this. Like my dad, not like as much, but my mom was very like, I don't want all these strangers on my property. Like they're going to break shit and I'm going to have to fix it. We're going to have to get like, I had to purchase insurance specifically to like get mom to be okay with it. And and everybody was wonderful. And I think that like my dad enjoys it a lot. He loves seeing everybody on the bikes coming down the road, and none of our neighbors have complained, which I fully anticipated people complaining. And the neighbors think it's amazing. And because we're like full on like 15 miles out of town, essentially. And so I was like expecting our neighbors to be like, bring all of these bikers into our area. But they're super supportive. And like this year they were like, well, you should put signs on our fence to make sure that people don't get lost. And that kind of like, it's been so cool. And this year there was 47 of us, and I full on was not expecting that many people.
Yeah.
But it's been great. And we have people who come that are like lifers now. And if they can't come one year, they buy tickets anyway, so they can still say that they're lifers.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And we created like a little like family within ourselves, and like new people come every year who are like, this is amazing, and I'm going to come back, because I tried my best to like create an event that I wanted to go to. Like taking out all the things that I don't particularly enjoy about larger events. Like there's no bands, there's no commercial vendors, nobody's trying to sell you anything. You're literally in a field left to your own devices, and we all hang out around a fire pit together. And we did add kind of like a bag shower after the request of a few city people who didn't want to go down into town to a gym to take a shower. But it's not like high pressure or anything like that. It's like literally like one of those solar bag showers. And like,
yeah. Gravity's your pressure.
Yes, exactly. I try to keep it as minimal as possible, because the thing that I enjoy about events the most is just getting to talk to other people who rode like to get to this event. Like the part that I love the most about rallies is the trip to get there, and then hanging out with people, and then the trip home. And so we kind of encourage people to like take the coolest route they can to get here, and then chill out and hang out and relax and like recharge, so that you can get home and not feel like you want to die, you know?
Yeah. And then you can talk about your experience while you guys are out in the field.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I really like your approach, because as I've gotten older, I've gotten more mellow. But one of the things that does still kind of bother me is people who complain about something and they don't try to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much opportunity in life to make what you think you're missing, or to fix something. So you see a problem, like you didn't like having a bunch of vendors at these events and various things. So you said, you know what? Let's make an event, and then it'll be exactly how I want it. And it goes the same way. For instance, I tried to be vegan for a little while, and I couldn't, just for multiple reasons. But one of the things that bothered me about trying to be vegan, especially in the beginning when you're trying to learn about it, and so you join the different Facebook groups, is that it seemed like there was constantly a war going on in those groups. You walk in, and figuratively, you walk into the group and all you see is people fighting, and it's such a turnoff to the experience that, it at least for me, it was one of the final nails in the coffin of just, I'm not gonna deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
But what I did do was I'd created another group of my own, and it went way better, because anyone who came in and tried to be like other people were in the groups, I could just boot them, And since then, I mean, my girlfriend still is vegan, so she can take care of the group and that sort of thing. But so many people in life, they just complain, but they don't take any steps to do anything about it. And I'm like, you can do it. You can. I promise you. If you see an opportunity, you can do something about it.
Yes.
Anyway,
it's like literally being the change that you want to see in the world.
Yeah. I mean, because like you said, some days or some years you had 17 people, but I bet you still enjoyed the event, right?
Yes, and it's actually amazing when it's tiny, because like we do a raffle every year. There's Al Cycle in Hamilton is our Yamaha dealership, and he always gives us stuff for the raffle. And we so when it's tiny, like everybody gets something, and oftentimes everybody gets two things. Like,
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, and not to mention you get to build a bit of a deeper connection with the people that are coming, because going from 17 to 40 even means
yeah,
that if you try to spread your time evenly, you're getting half the amount of time with people.
yeah,
And inevitably you find some person or a group of people that you end up talking with longer. So,
yes, definitely.
yeah. So what sparked though your event? Did you just one day say, you know what, I want my own event and just did it, or was there some other spark that lit that?
I just wanted to have a party when I got home from the pilgrimage. Like, I didn't mean it to be like a ticketed event. I didn't mean for it to be a yearly thing. I just like, I was like, I'm gonna do like 6,000 miles. This is gonna be huge. I've never done this kind of mileage before. And I think it'd be cool if like everybody met me in Montana when I finished, and that would be cool. And then I kind of like, I put it on my like Instagram, and then a bunch of people who I didn't like know in real life were like, I want to come. And I was like, oh, okay. And my mom was like, well, if you have this many people who want to come, you have to get porta potties and insurance, because if we don't know them, like, we don't know if they're going to screw shit up. And so that's when it became ticketed thing. And then I just opened it up to the public. And then like a bunch of my friends in Portland who I wanted to come to the party who couldn't come because it was too short notice. So I was like, well, I guess we'll have to do this again. I get next year, I guess. That's okay.
So really very organically is what you're saying. It just sort
Yes,
of grew
very organically.
from a whim almost.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things in life happen through serendipity and end up being, great joys, I feel like.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did want to ask you about is going through the different articles and listening to the podcasts. One of the common themes I was seeing was that, you've got this real longing for Montana, rural life, motorcycles. One of the reasons it sounds like you go back all the time is that you really miss Montana and that rural life. I guess my question is, what about that stuff do you think causes that sort of a desire to get back to it? And what prevents you from just, now that you're out of school, going back?
Well, the prevention part is an easy answer. I met a boy here, and the boy was born and raised in Portland, and he's a city boy through and through, and he won't move.
Okay.
I have gotten like to the maybe stage with him. We've been together for like 7.5 years. We're coming up on 8 here in January. So I love him, and everybody who's going to comment like you should just break up with him and move back to Montana, they can shove it. But like after a lot of talking about it, we have gotten to the point where like it's kind of like a maybe we can live in both places, like because I inherited my grandmother's home in Montana on our property, so I have a house there, and so like maybe we can live like half the year there and half the year here. I just have to figure out how to financially cover the house in Portland while we're in Montana for half of the year, essentially. And so it's kind of like getting there. I'll get back to Montana someday. And I know that I will. Like in my bones, I know that I will end up in Montana before I die. But for right now, this is where I am. And I go home as often as I can.
So what about it, though, do you think struck such a strong impression on you?
I am a 6th generation Bitterrooter. 6 generations born and raised in Montana, and we're a dying breed. There aren't a whole lot of people who are born and raised in Montana anymore. There's a lot of implants. And there's something about knowing that like generations and generations before you have put their blood, sweat, and tears into the same dirt, essentially. And I think nostalgia is a big, big part of it. Like so much of my childhood was like amazing. Like we were not rich. And I didn't realize how poor we were until I moved to Portland and I made a bunch of other friends, and I was like, learned about their childhoods, and I'm like, what? But like, I think that's just a testament to how amazing my family was and how incredible my mom and my dad were, that at no point did I want for anything. I was always fed. I was never hungry. We always had clothes. We always were warm in the wintertime. It was a wood stove in a trailer, but I was warm. And I think when you have those basic needs met, and like, you don't feel like you're a part of a rat race, you get to appreciate life in a different way, I think. And when I was much, much younger, like the property was like 120 acres. Like I had so much room to play, and I didn't even have to like leave our home, you know? There's this big ravine that runs to the middle of our property, and like that was my playground. And like that like fed my creativity so much, still feeds my creativity so much, because like it felt like anything was possible. You just had to imagine it. And I think like so much of my love for Montana is just like being surrounded by mountains. I'm a mountain child. And also that feeling that anything is possible, and if you try hard enough you can make it happen. And being in Portland felt very caging, restrictive. And when I moved here, a lot of people didn't like me because I was a ranch kid. That kind of like vegan, toxic culture where, oh my God, you kept animals and you killed them. You are a horrible, horrible person. And all they have to base that opinion off of is like extremist documentaries that they saw on Netflix of feed farms and commercial animal slaughter. And that's not the way that I grew up. Animals were as important as your life, like essentially. I remember I have memories of like going out in blizzards when I was a kid to make sure that the calves didn't freeze to the ground, you know? That kind of stuff. I was like, that's a tangent on its own, but I don't know. It's a simpler way of life. And I guess I'm always trying to get back to that part of me, I think. If that even makes any kind of sense. I don't know.
No, it definitely does make sense. And I guess I'm curious that if the current boyfriend knows all that, what's his equally strong motivation for staying? Because it definitely sounds like it's something that's really, really important to you, and that type of a conversation usually leads to some sort of compromise. You'd hope, you know, like why should one person in the relationship get their way? But I mean, I guess it sounds like you're slowly getting to some sort of a, you know, compromise from him. But for me, it seems pretty difficult to hear that story and think that someone could be still so stubborn about it, you know?
We are both stubborn in our own ways.
Oh, of course. Oh, definitely. I'm sure everyone's got their thing, right?
But also like his whole family is here. And I like being somebody who has been away from my family for so long, I don't feel right like trying to drag somebody away from their family just so that I can be close to my family, when it's much easier for me to go to Montana and back than it is for him. Like he's a homebody. He doesn't like to travel a lot. So I wouldn't feel right dragging him to Montana, knowing that traveling to Montana to see his family is like above and beyond like what it is for me to go home to see my family. Like we've talked about it a lot. And like when we graduated college together, like I had full intentions of just moving back to Montana, and we fought about it a lot. And we kind of like came to like this kind of realization. It's like, does it really matter more than our relationship? And I kind of thought, no, not really. And because he supported me through everything. How many significant others do you know who would support you? Like, yeah, you can go off and live off of a bike for 2.5 months and essentially only call me once a week and trust you through that, you know?
I mean,
And I
the
think
answer
that's
would be all the good ones, but how
yeah,
many of them are there, right? I don't know. All the decent humans out there would, but
yeah, exactly. Like, but finding those decent humans is a stretch.
yeah.
And also because like he, not necessarily like the first boyfriend that I've ever had who understood me, but one of the very few humans that I have ever been in a relationship with who understood me, and we have art in common. He doesn't ride, but he is also an artist, and like that is a huge part of me as well. And that was so much more important to me to have somebody who understood, like, when I get in a groove and I need to not be touched so that I can get through this piece, or like, you know, like stuff like that. He like, if I get into a grind and I'm going straight through, he'll bring me food to make sure that I eat, and like everything that's part of like a healthy relationship. And that means so much more to me right now than just being home and knowing that I can go home whenever I want. Like, you know,
Yeah.
just because I'm not living there right now, I know that I will someday. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? I don't know.
No, it does. It does answer my question, and it shows one of the weaknesses of being an outsider, because the social media experience makes you feel like you know people more than you
Oh
really
yeah.
do, right? And so, you know, you're only as good as the information you're getting. So, you know, for me, I'm reading all these articles and listening to the podcasts, and you know, I'm watching your YouTube videos, and you seem to have such a passion for Montana and
Yes.
the rural life, and you're always talking in these different interviews and things about missing it so much.
Yes.
That it seems like it would be one of the top priorities in your life to kind of get back there. And because you know, my own view on relationships is that, you know, people should be able to do what they want to do in the relationships, that it's tough to be like, no, I'm you know, we fought about it, we're staying here.
Yeah.
You know, but the context is, you know, everything you just described, and it makes a lot more sense when you know, you each have your things, and you found someone who complements you in so many other ways. Like if you've got one area, if anyone has one area in a relationship where they've got some conflict, then you're doing pretty well, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like if there's anything that I've learned from like my parents' relationship, everything is compromise. And like, as long as you're both happy in the end, that's all that matters.
Yeah. So my own tack is that I feel like people should compromise in a relationship on whatever makes sense to them. To me, it's small things, but for
Mhm.
things that kind of touch on your core, that's when it's like, at that point, maybe you just aren't a right fit, you know. At least that's my own perspective. But
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to find someone who, you know, the things that we compromise on are things that are perfectly reasonable in my mind.
Yeah.
We don't have any of those sort of hot button things that would touch on the core of who we are that we disagree on.
Yeah.
So anyway, for what it's worth. So I guess let's switch gears a little bit again, and I kind of want to go back to horses indirectly.
Mhm.
You said that, you know, once you discovered motorcycles, they really became part of your art.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if before motorcycles were horses a big part of your art.
Yes.
And if so, do you still incorporate horses? And if so, where can we see stuff like that?
I think, oh my God, when was the last time I drew a horse? College, probably. A lot of the work that I made in college was inspired by how out of place that I felt in the city. So there's a lot of horses like surrounded by buildings or something like that. A lot of drawings of cowboys and that kind of, and I kind of became obsessed with like the wild, like 19th century Wild West. Essentially, that was what my thesis was about. Actually, it was the 19th century, and oh gosh, I don't know how much of that is still up on the internet. I mean, I'm sure it's still up on the internet. It's just like in dark corners now. I had a Tumblr when I was in college, so I guess if you really wanted to dig through it, you could go to blindthistle.tumblr.com, and that has a lot of yeah.
I did, you know, but I think that I didn't scroll down long enough because I was seeing a lot of more of your tattoo art, I think.
Yeah.
And you know, which by the way, that I really liked your tattoo art. It kind of reminds me of sort of Americana meets watercolor or something.
Yeah.
And it was really pretty. Anyway.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you I think if you put that URL in it and do like /archive, you can like get back to the older stuff a lot faster than the infinite scroll.
Yeah. Okay. So your horses might be on your Tumblr. Good to know.
Yes.
Have you
I
thought about
think if you backtrack on Instagram long enough, you'll probably find it too, but that's gonna take a while.
Okay. Do you feel like you're just kind of not out of love, but artistically out of love with horses now because you did a lot early on and you're just more focused on motorcycles, or do you feel like that you're focusing more on things that are sort of relevant to getting commissions and stuff?
I think a lot of my work in the last 3 years has been pretty dominated by commissions, like what I'm getting paid to make, and also like what feeds the algorithm, unfortunately. Like I can draw like as many hot ladies as I want, but nobody wants to look at them, you know? And like same thing like with horses and that kind of stuff. It's just like it's not the niche that I have made for myself. So it's not what my audience is interested in. And I think that's okay. Like I find my own ways to like sneak in like stuff that matters to me in my work. Like I have a piece of like an Africa twin going through a landscape, but there's a cowboy in the background, but you have to look for him. I noticed a lot of people missed him, even though I think he's pretty obvious. I think that I have the postcard to show you. I don't think that it'll come across very well, but this one, that one.
I own that.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I didn't. Oh, geez. I didn't notice that was a cowboy.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's really cool. Now I can appreciate that even more. I have it hanging above my desk, actually.
Yeah, and then like I do like stuff like that. He's
oh, I remember that one. To see,
but yeah. I find little ways to sneak it in there. And there's like a lot of my work is just like there's little hints of just redneck hidden in corners that I don't think a lot of people notice, which is probably a good thing.
Do you feel like you grew up sort of redneck, or?
Oh yes, I am 100% redneck.
Okay.
The only reason we live in a home and not like a fifth wheel or something like that is because that was Jonathan's family. Yeah.
What do you feel like is representative of redneck? Because I know, like, when I think of redneck, it might be different than what you're thinking of with redneck. So I'm curious what yours is, because mine's like camo cowboy hats in your wedding with your latest deer hunt hanging behind the preacher as you guys are getting married. What's your idea of redneck?
Yes, like a lot of camo, yes, and duct tape. And for me, like redneck is based in ingenuity. You use what you have to make whatever you want to do work, essentially. So when I was growing up, since we were one of the only ones in like our friend group growing up that had property, a lot of people, like if their car broke down, if they lived in town, they're like, well, can I just park it on your property and I'll like get the money together to fix it? And of course that never happens in the Valley. Everybody lives pretty lower middle class in the Valley compared to like Portland or any other big city. So like getting enough money together to fix a vehicle is kind of unheard of. It's cheaper to get another beater and keep that running than fix like brakes or suspension or anything. Mm-hmm. So we used to say that we were car poor because there was 100+ cars parked in our backyard.
Do you guys ever set a deadline? Like, if you don't have it done in a year, we get to part out your car?
No. Mostly it's like my dad was the one bringing most of the vehicles in, and like it wasn't a thing. It wasn't until like I was about to graduate high school that like he finally like hired a crusher to come to our property down from Missoula, and that crusher took out 80 cars, and there's still a lot of cars on our property.
Wow. So, I mean, you never took up sculpture then, huh?
No, I didn't take up sculpture, but I like did a lot of weird craft things, and I like one of the things that I missed the most when I moved to Portland was just not being able to like go out into the backyard and like find what I needed to make something work. Essentially, I made like we had a couple trailers on our property as well, just like from like my siblings like trying to come up and move onto the property, and then they would just leave their trailer there or something like that. So then I would make like a little like clubhouse, essentially, the redneck version of a treehouse out of an old trailer, and like pull like the back seat out of one of the cars and make that my couch, and like make stairs and a side table out of old tires, and like that's what redneck is to me. Like you use what is available to you to make whatever you want to make happen. And for a lot of people, that is camo and duct tape. And
that's really funny.
And a lot of thrift store clothes.
Well, I mean, that's just practical, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think Portland's got to be big on thrift stores, I'd assume.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. That was such a culture shock coming over here. Because, like, you can get a pair of pants for $4 at the thrift store in Montana. It's getting worse now because so many other people are moving in and raising up those prices. But when I was a kid, you know, like you get a pair of pants for $4 thrift store that was like $30 at the retail store, you know. And here, like a pair of jeans is $25 in the thrift store. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's a combination of thrift stores are getting a little bit more savvy, and the hipster movement has really, I think, bumped up demand because in the past it was more, I think, people who needed a thrift store would shop at the thrift stores.
Yes.
Versus making some sort of a political statement by shopping.
Yes. Yeah. Like so much of the thrift store culture in Portland is that like zero waste movement for one, like the hipster movement. There's a lot of thrift stores in Portland that are like the people who own them spend a lot of time, oh my God, what is the word? Narrowing down the selection that they have. Yep.
Make it like a boutique experience or something.
Yes, like a boutique experience. It's curated. That's the word that I want.
Yes.
Curated selection of like things that they think that their audience are about. Like the most notorious one I can think of is like the Buffalo Exchange on Burnside is so curated. And like they do like pay good money to if you sell your clothes to them, but it has to be a certain brand. It has to be in a certain condition. For them to take it because they know their genre.
That's really funny. And you know, at the same time, I think it's like everything else. It's multifaceted, right? Because in one respect, it's probably good for the planet that more people are avoiding fast fashion and feeding the machine of globalization. And then on the other hand, people who need thrift stores are now having to compete with the fact that it's in vogue to go shop at thrift stores. So prices naturally go up, and then you get curated curated products at your thrift store where it just used to be a utilitarian place you could go. It's like I need a shirt or a pair of pants or overalls, whatever. You can go get them, get out. And now even Goodwill. I don't know if you've been going to Goodwills, but even Goodwill, there's one right next to my house. They'll have separate racks where they've got sort of the new, like almost like new releases in video store, right? It's like this stuff just came in and it's from a name brand. And so it's going to be twice the price until, until it doesn't sell.
We make fun of the Goodwill that's in downtown because the downtown Goodwill is curated like, oh my God, like they only have name brand things in the downtown Goodwill. Like, and everything is like 2 or 3 times as expensive as any other Goodwill in the city.
That's crazy.
Like the good thing, like though, is that there are still a lot of mom and pop thrift stores. Like you just have to get out of like the main metropolitan area, unfortunately. And like that part is not so great for like the families who need those thrift stores in town that can't afford the gas to get outside of town. But the Portland does have a thing that we call the bins.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the mega Goodwill where all of the donations are sent before they're cleaned and they're like dispersed to whatever part of the city. And so if you go to that one, like you do have to bring gloves and like a mask and that kind of stuff because you're going through stuff that hasn't been cleaned yet. So it's in the state that it was given to Goodwill, and you would not believe the state that stuff people give to Goodwill. Wow. I like when I was college student, we would go there like as a group. We would all, because I was also still the only person that had a car. I don't know how always make a friend group that I'm the only person with a car. It just happens. Anyway, so we'd all pull into my car and we'd go down to the bins and we'd like glove up and like mask up, like go in because you can buy clothing by the pound there.
Wow.
And so it doesn't matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter what condition it's in. Like you buy clothing by the pound. And we found a pair of pants that like somebody had like put a pudding cup in and it had exploded.
Pudding cup.
Yes.
Is that what you're telling yourselves?
And like, we're just like, who does this? Like, you're going to give your clothes to charity and you just, okay, that's fine. Whatever.
Did you guys end up buying them?
No. They weren't my size.
Oh man, that's I can totally believe it though, because I feel like some people just sort of use it as a cheap way to dump their stuff instead of I mean, depending on where you live, you have to pay by the bag for garbage.
Like like, and also just like you're still avoiding that like deep guilt of throwing away clothes. So like ultimately, like still, I would still much rather people donate their clothes to Goodwill than ever throw them away. But
it seems an unnecessary waste. Not that any waste is necessary, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
even more
absolutely.
so.
And like and not to like give like Portland thrift stores like a bad rap. I think it's incredible that they've been able to do what they have been able to do, and get past the stigma that seems to have come out of the 90s about like shopping at thrift stores is a bad thing. Because I think that is amazing. And I think that like that is such a more sustainable model. I think that like if we could get away from like, mall fast fashion stores and get back to like sustainable brands that like, they are more expensive, but their clothing lasts so much longer. And like blue sign companies, the ones that like, they pay their workers a living wage and they just like they source their materials sustainably, and then having that trickle down at the thrift stores, and then so people who can't afford to buy those brand new can then buy clothing that is going to last a long time, and continue that cycle, because when they're done with it, they can donate it back and it can continue to have a life. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. And if the fires aren't enough of an example of what can happen if we ignore the world, the pandemic that, we got one right now and there's going to be more in the future, I'm sure, as things warm up. I was reading an article about reindeer. Like there was a plague that happened to reindeer because the permafrost melted, and all these reindeer that had died who knows how long ago had some sort of bacteria or something in them that ended up infecting the local populations currently. So the more we can do, because there's few low hanging fruits out there, really. I feel like where you're not going to make someone too angry. Like, for instance, California saying no more gas vehicles or no more gas cars. After,
oh my God, that was crazy.
Like, I don't know how that's going to last. We'll see, maybe, but I feel like the next Republican governor they elect is just going to undo all that. But
I mean, like they didn't say that like you couldn't have a gas vehicle. They just said that you couldn't sell any new ones after 2035. And which they left out motorcycles, by the way, street legal motorcycles.
Which I was happy about,
yeah. Just dirt bikes and ATVs.
It's really, it just goes to show how complicated people are, because at the same time that I think that we need to be doing as much as we can to keep the world from completely um, burning up and all those things. I really dislike nanny states. So I don't know if I could
Yeah.
ever live in California where someone told me you can't swap out your exhaust, which by the way, I have a stock exhaust on a Harley and I'm not in a hurry to swap it. So it isn't even
Yeah.
as if like I
Yeah.
need it.
It's not like you're going out of your way to flaunt the system, but like, it's like, I like all of my vehicles are still like based in Montana because like my truck can't pass emissions in Portland. And I go home enough that I'm still a dual citizen, so I can do that. But like, and I help with the ranch enough, like I'm part of that business and that kind of stuff. It's like all a mess anyway. But that's
You own a
part of
house
like,
out there.
yeah, I own a house there. Like I have an address there. Like, so like, yeah, so all my vehicles are still Montana licensed because like my truck can't pass emissions in Oregon, not because it's like gas guzzling. It's not like it's producing smoke all the time. It's because one tiny sensor in my engine is broken that says that I'm not feeding my like fumes back into the engine to burn off again. It is doing that, but my sensor that is broken. So I can't pass emissions here.
And none of the cars on your dad's or your parents' property has a sensor you could just pull out of there.
No. Like, oh my God. Like my dad and my brother and I have, I'm the last of 6 kids, by the way. I keep talking about my one specific brother because he's the closest to me. But I do have like 4 older brothers and a sister. And Gary is just the closest one to me in age. Anyway, so Gary and my dad and I all have F-150s, but they're all different years. So we can't switch parts.
You guys should just swap cars. You take the one that'll pass emissions out in Portland, and they take yours.
But like also like my like motorcycle plates in Montana are permanent, and you have to pay registration on a motorcycle like every 2 years in Portland, and it's like $200-300 some dollars, and it's stupid.
Is Portland one of the states without a state income tax though, or is that?
We don't have sales tax.
Oh, that's what it is. You don't have sales
Yes.
tax. So I mean, they're just trying
tax.
to get the money wherever they can, I suppose.
Yes. Yes. It also keeps like if Oregon has so many more larger cities than Montana does, and so like emissions is a much bigger concern here than it is in Montana. So like on that end of things, I totally understand why like that stuff is there, and like there's so many niche motorcycle culture things in Oregon where they do like remove the stock exhaust and do everything that they can to a vehicle, like removing the catalytic converter and everything else to make it sound better, that kind of stuff. So I understand why the laws are there in Oregon. I still would rather have permanent plates on a motorcycle. Even if permanent plates in Oregon was much more expensive, I would pay it. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, even I've got a truck right now that I haven't re-registered because the registration expired during the pandemic, and it's like now I found out that they have a new process in place where you can kind of get this 1-year extension, and it's sort of COVID friendly where you don't have to interact with anyone or anything. But prior to that, it was like they have to stick their head in your car and do all these things. And I was like, really, this is not worth it. I got a motorcycle. I'll ride that around. I don't need the truck for anything. So I've just been kind of putting it off. But now my girlfriend's AC went out in her car, and my truck has AC. So it's the plan is we're going to get mine registered again too. So if she needs to go anywhere, because we live in Phoenix, and
that's
AC
kind of vital.
Yeah, it's not that optional out here.
Yeah, that's like it's like having a heater in Montana. That is not an option. It is a requirement.
Yeah. If you don't want to die, it's a requirement now. If your goal is to never come back from your latest trip,
that's fine. Yeah.
Then you're set.
Yeah, that's like Montana, like because they don't have the emissions, I can re-register the truck online. I don't have to go into the courthouse.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Isn't it nice?
It is. You want to know something funny? When I was a kid, I used to dream about moving to Montana.
Yes.
And the reason I dreamed about moving to Montana was that I was under the false assumption that land would be super cheap because no one wanted to live there. Now I'm talking like 7, 8 years old, like super, super young. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I could go build such a big house out there. I wouldn't have anyone around. I could be by myself and it would be dirt cheap. So I wouldn't have to make that much money. And then later on in life, I found out actually it's pretty expensive to live in Montana. So that's probably not going to be
I
very
mean, like cost of living is lower, but you pay out the nose for property tax.
Yeah, and I think at the time I was looking into it, it seemed like the actual prices of houses and ranches and things like that were pretty expensive. So
Yeah, like if you're gonna get established property, it's expensive. And then it also depends on what part of the state, because like if you get like somewhere in central Montana, eastern Montana, it's gonna be a whole lot cheaper than western Montana, because then you're talking about plains country and there isn't a whole lot out there. But there's also like stuff outside of like Three Forks. If you get property that doesn't have, if you're just talking about base property, you can get like 15, 20 acres for 15 grand, which is unheard of in Oregon. But you're still talking about having to put in power and water. But if you make a shack and you can live off the land, that's not that bad.
well, the goal was a castle.
Oh, right. Okay.
When I was a kid, I really wanted a castle, and that sort of belief got sealed in when we moved to Italy, and we were we would ride around and visit all these castles and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, how can I have a castle? These things are amazing. And I don't know why I got Montana in my head, but for some reason I had this belief that no one wanted to live there, so everything would be so cheap and I could be away from people. And then as you get older and you like start looking into things, it's like, oh no. And then plus I discovered I hate snow.
Oh yeah, that's a problem.
At the time that I was making these plans. So yeah,
that's
all went out the window.
You kind of have to love the snow to live in Montana.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much I dislike living anywhere with snow. I lived in Illinois for a few years, and that was a miserable experience. And that, where we were living wasn't even the snowiest part of Illinois, And I lived in DC and New York for a while. And in those places, we didn't get huge amounts of snow, but the amount of snow we did get was so miserable. I couldn't handle it. So yeah, multiple reasons popped up to say Montana's probably not the place to retire.
See, I love Montana winters because where I grew up, we were high elevation. There isn't a whole lot of humidity. When it does snow, it's a very dry snow. And in Portland, it rains 6 months of the year, and you can't see the sky for 4 months.
Perfect.
Because it's just clouds. It's just gray clouds. You're under a gray blanket. And I didn't know that I had seasonal depression until I moved here.
See, I hear that, and I think softbox, a natural softbox for most of the year.
Oh, we have a sad light now that I have to sit next to for like a good 2 hours of the day every day in the wintertime.
Wow.
But if I could just see the sky every once in a while, that'd be cool.
I actually, I get migraines sparked by flashes of light sometimes.
Okay.
And so the glint and glare out here in Arizona, because if you want to talk about sun, we have no clouds basically, it's every day is sunny, and it sounds amazing unless you get migraines from glint and glare. And I'll be driving in or back from work sometimes, and the cars, like the sun will hit the windshield a certain way and it'll hit me in the eye, and the next thing you know, I'm getting a migraine.
Oh man.
Yeah.
There's no winning for you. You either get the snow or you get sun, but migraines.
That's all right. I keep my windows closed at work. I used to have coworkers come up to me and they'd come into my office and be like, "Why are all of your blinds closed? Like you've got these giant windows you can look out of and you've made it into like a cave." And I was like, "Hey, I get migraines from light, you know.
Yeah.
It's specifically when it comes in at an angle to my eye somehow. Anyway, whatever. It is
Yeah.
what it is. But I work around
Perfect
it by
storm.
keeping the
Yeah.
blinds closed. I make sure that I wear sunglasses, like really good sunglasses, when I am driving. And at the house right now, I got a 32-inch monitor for my desk where I work, and I put it right in front of me so it blocks the windows.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been perfect.
Yeah.
No snow. I can ride year round because even though it gets to over 110, I'll still, gear up in everything and ride around. And as long as I, pace myself and make sure I come back within a reasonable amount of time, then I can still ride even in the height of
Yeah.
summer. So,
Yeah, and winter is ideal down there in Phoenix.
oh my
The
gosh,
benefit of
it
having a
is so
broken clutch in
beautiful.
Phoenix, it was amazing.
How long were you in Phoenix?
I was there for a week.
Okay. Is it on this latest trip or on a different trip?
March 2019. So when I tried to do the Captor and I burnt out the clutch on the Tiger, I ended up in Phoenix because that was the closest Triumph dealership. And the way that my roadside assistants work is that they'll take me anywhere as long as it's to the dealership if I have an issue. Otherwise, it's like 10 miles or something like that. And we were in, oh my gosh, somewhere in Southern California. And my clutch broke. And so it was either an option to go to like freaking, I don't know, like San Diego or something like that, or to Phoenix. And at the time, Tim was still in Phoenix. And I was like, well, I can get a free ride to Phoenix and maybe I'll see Tim while I'm there. That sounds a whole lot better than hang out in San Diego. And so my insurance covered the tow of like 200-300 miles all the way to Phoenix.
Wow. Who's Tim?
Tim, 40 times around is his channel on YouTube.
Okay,
Tim
I don't
Collins.
know him.
Oh my God. This might be like the first time that I've met somebody who knew me before Tim.
Hey, hold on. 40 times around, you said?
Yes. Yeah. His channel name is FTA Adventures now.
Okay. I'll check him out.
Yeah. He's like, a lot of people call us like the king and queen of the ADV niche on YouTube.
Okay. I'm having Jocelyn Snow on later today.
Yes!
Actually, I'll be talking to her and talking about ADV people. I mean, she created an ADV like obstacle course on her property. I guess my question to you is, where's your ADV course on your parents' property? You know?
See, Jocelyn is an incredible rider. Like her technical skill is amazing. I, on the other hand, am somebody who's like, I just want to go over there and see something pretty. And doesn't matter how slow I have to go to get there, I will get there. I am like the worst role model for ADV because I have taken no classes. Everything that I know about riding on dirt, I have learned from trial and error. A lot of error. And wow. Every time I think about taking one of those classes to like get better, I look at the cost and I'm like, I could go to Montana and back 3 times for the cost of that class. I think I want to go to Montana instead.
But is there really a price on education? I mean,
there's not. No. And this is just me prioritizing travel.
I think that she might offer those types of classes too.
Yes.
So you might be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and hang out with Jocelyn Snow while also learning to be better in the dirt. So, and it's a trip as well, right? Because she's based in California and you're in Oregon. So you could make a trip out to wherever she's at on your bike. Yeah. You just got to justify it to yourself in other ways too, right? I mean, I've got this mental gymnastics all the time about when I buy equipment. It's like, if I do this, then this, and this.
Yeah. And I think like also like a lot of the ADV market focuses so much on like doing this gnarly like dirt things you should be doing on a dirt bike with a big bike, and for the sake of doing it. And I I don't do ADV to say that I went up some gnarly route on a mountain. I do ADV so I can see new pretty things that I haven't seen before. And like doing the Cabter, like really like ran it home for me that like my satisfaction in riding isn't doing obstacles for obstacle sakes, or like getting really technically good at something so that I can be technically good at it. I want to ride to experience like the wonderful world that we have available to us, and experiencing nature and that kind of stuff, and being technically good at something and being able to do really, really gnarly routes for the sake of doing a gnarly route just isn't my jam.
You know, I wonder though, I'm sure some people do it just to do it, right? Like they're doing gnarly routes to do gnarly routes, but there's also the thought that if you over prepare and you can do things that you hope you'll never have to, then it makes all the other obstacles that you are more likely to run into pretty easy, right? To where it's like if you can go up and down a ramp that like teeter totters, then you know you can go around a boulder or something and not have to worry about eating it. And
Totally.
I guess I was I interviewed a guy who did a trip from the DC area to Alaska, and then from Alaska all the way down to Argentina.
Mhm.
And like the different scenarios that he ran into along that trip, um, I think that having good dirt skills was a benefit to him. And even with them, he still said he fell a bunch,
Mhm.
you know. So
Well,
I
I
guess
mean,
it all
like
depends on where
there's
you're planning on going.
yeah, but there's also people like Lois Price who like flew her bike from the UK to Alaska and rode all the way down to South America, did the Pan America with like zero experience.
Oh yeah, it can definitely be done. But you know, for instance, like if you didn't want to be limited, he went and drove up the side of a road to a volcano in
Mhm.
Nicaragua, and I think it'd be hard. I mean, you could probably do it, right? Obviously, you can do anything if you have enough time and desire.
Mhm.
But having a little bit more skill would definitely make that a quicker process. Because
Totally. And I'm like, I'm not downing, like, absolutely, if you have the like the time and the money to do so, like improving your skills is always worth it. But also I know a lot of people who obsess over it,
oh yeah,
and you spend way more time like going to these classes and like practicing those skills over and over and over again until you can do it perfectly, and then never getting out and doing the thing.
yeah, yeah. That's why I like. I'm also a big fan of ready fire aim kind of a
Mhm.
concept where it's like you do a little bit of prep work and then you just do it and then you work it out as you go. You
Mhm.
know, because if you get too obsessed with trying to be perfect before you start, then you may never start.
Mhm.
You know, so I mean, I definitely see that perspective too. I'm just uh, for the sake of argument's sake, I
Mhm.
guess, talking
Yeah.
about the whole training side of it, mostly because I'm kind of obsessed right now too with like learning new skills because I'm a brand new
Yeah.
writer, um,
Yeah.
and it's just something I'm interested in, I suppose. And then I guess I hear the Moto Jitsu voice in the back of my head where he's just like, get out and practice, you know, go take classes, don't
Yes. Yeah.
die.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, like it would never be my intention to discourage people from learning or going to classes. Like I am the first advocate for people taking like every like safety course that they can before they like get out onto the street. And I'm very, very grateful to have had a grandpa who wouldn't let me go get my license until I took the safety class, because it's not required in Montana
Hmm.
to have the safety course before you get your endorsement. And because like that class like reduced like so much of the fear that I had around the bike, like that would have got me into a lot of trouble. Um, so I'm like the first advocate for that. But as far as like extra skills and that kind of stuff, I've always been a jump head in and see if I need to or not person.
Makes sense. Some people are naturals at things too, you know, or you know, they're natural enough that it works for their purposes.
I think it, like just getting like a base baseline of like your expectations of what a thing is, and then evaluating if the money is worth it to invest in classes and that kind of stuff. And like that, like that's the way I was with art. Like I paid 30 grand to have a bachelor's degree in fine arts, and not because I didn't think that I was good at drawing, but because I knew that I could learn more.
Yeah.
So.
And as a person who went to school for accounting, I hear 30 grand on art degree, and it's like,
yeah. It's a lot of money.
yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't go back and not do it either. So.
And it's funny that I see so much value in classes for motorcycles, but I'm kind of the opposite when it comes to jobs. I feel like right now college has become so expensive in so many different facets that the amount of debt that you're loaded with doesn't seem worth it at this point for a lot of people, I think. I mean, obviously everyone's going to get something different out of school, but
yes,
I hear about people, for instance, I know a guy who went to private school to be a teacher, and teachers have notoriously low salaries. And the school he went to was a private school, a liberal arts school, and it was super, super expensive. And the amount of debt that he came out with was staggering. And I don't know when, as a teacher, he'll ever be able to pay that back. But he loved his school. As a matter of fact, he's going back for his master's there, and he loves his job. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's just money. But
it's just money, and trying to weigh the value of everything that you experience at school versus like 30 grand. Like I would easily price my education at PNCA at 75 grand. Like it was everything. I mean, not everything, but like without that, like if I had done what a lot of people say to do now, which is just like go on Skillshare and like learn on Skillshare, do online courses and that kind of stuff, I would have missed out on all of the people that I met in art school, the support base that I now have as a result of us all going to art school together and bonding over that. Like I get jobs from other people that I went to school with because they can't do it right now. And I give jobs to other people that I went to school with because I can't do them right now. And I like the rate at which I improved like in my art by itself was well worth the money and that span of time. I'm sure that I would have improved eventually, but not in the span of 4 years. Just in the first year, I improved more than I had 8 years of me trying to teach myself, and all of the materials involved, like all the things that we were given by the school. I don't know. I know that like a lot of people don't have a great experience at college, but I also think that a lot of college is what you put into it, essentially. If you are there to learn and you take advantage of all the resources available to you to, like, that's the other thing. Like college is like part of that fee is all of the resources and activities and things that they list there for you. And so many people who go to college like just party and get drunk all the time, and they don't take advantage of all the resources that are available to them as a result of being college. Like I took a ton of like AP classes because we get like 2 or 3 credits, free credits to take AP classes during the summer every single year. And I took those. I don't know. I think that I definitely got my money's worth out of my school.
That's good. Well, I mean, value is different, right? Than price. I mean,
yes.
People say the same thing about Harleys, like, oh,
yeah,
why in the hell would you spend all that money on a Harley? You know, and it's like, because to me, the value is there. It's not there for you, which is understandable. But
because like Harley and BMW and Triumph, all those brands are creating a culture. You're not just buying a motorcycle. You're not buying into sounds terrible, but you're buying into a culture and a family that is already there for you.
Well, and if you're like me, the things that you value about a motorcycle are different. Like everyone's got their own values, right? So for me, I wanted a very analog machine. I enjoy that analog experience. And I want to eventually learn to work on bikes, because one of the things that I am disappointed in my own life is that I never really learned to do anything mechanical related. And so I figure as soon as my warranty's up on the bike, then I'll start learning to do some of my own work on it. And starting with a simpler machine, um, in my mind, is a better option than going with something with a lot of tech.
Definitely.
Where it's like now it's like not only do you have to worry about the mechanical side of it, but then there's all these interconnected like technical things in there,
And
then
like
I'm like,
3
what is
computers.
this? I don't know.
Yeah, those other, like, I'm so glad that my first bike was a 30-year-old bike. Like, I can't imagine trying to I mean, like, I can fix Briarios now, but trying to fix a 2016 bike when I first started learning about how like motorcycle engines work and that kind of stuff would have been so daunting. I mean, prying open a 30-year-old bike when it's your only motorcycle was very daunting, but the fact that everything on Lazarus is very cut and dry, even the wiring harness is so easy, like because it's just literally just like battery to lights, battery to like starter solenoid, you know, like that, the battery to alternator, that like to the rectifier, and it's very, very cut and dry. So I'm one of those advocates that I'm like, I think everybody should have a shitty old bike as their first bike, because you're going to learn how that bike works, because you're not going to have an option.
Yeah. If I didn't have such bad luck with used vehicles, I definitely was going to go with a really crappy bike. But a couple things stopped me. Number one, it's so expensive to get all the tools together sometimes. And I don't really have a bunch of tools. And if I'm already buying a bike, I didn't want to put out the money for the tools yet either. I'd rather spread that out, you know what I mean? Pick up a little bit here, a little bit there. But also it gets really hot out in Phoenix. And I don't have anywhere, because I have a garage, but it's not air conditioned, you know? And so it's like 120 in there. And the thought of needing to spend any length of time in the garage wrenching on a bike just didn't appeal to me as my first experience with a motorcycle. So I was like, all right.
Oh, believe me, I've changed brakes when it's 26 degrees in the snow in Montana. I know how you feel.
Yeah, see, that sounds horrible. Now, were they brakes on a car or on a motorcycle?
Oh, brakes on my truck.
Okay.
Were almost they drum or disc?
Were they drum or disc or both?
Disc brakes, yeah.
Okay. I learned a few years ago how to change brake pads on a Dodge Neon, and it had disc brakes in the front, drum brakes in the back.
Oh God!
And the guy teaching me how to do it didn't have the spring puller for the drum brakes, and so we're trying to use like screwdrivers and stuff and like stretch out the springs to get this thing apart it was just I thought mechanics earn every penny that they make, because I don't ever want to do this. But the disc brakes were way easier, and I was like, oh, I could probably do disc brakes again. But now with like ABS and everything tied to them and stuff, I feel like even brakes are getting more complicated to work on.
Yeah, I'm still grateful that my truck is a 2000. My dad's is a 2005. I think Gary's is a 2004. They have a whole lot more electrical things to that brake.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be transformers soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at this point, you're going to need an electrical engineering degree. You're not going to need a mechanical engineering degree to work on a bike.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's already getting that way with motorcycles. Like a lot of the newer Harleys, because I spent a lot of time in the shop part when I worked at the dealership. And before you do anything on a Triumph or even like the newer Harleys, you have to plug them into the computer first. Like, especially like the newer Tigers, because their computer is very sensitive. So you have to plug it into the computer first, and you tell the computer that you're going to work on it, so the computer doesn't think that it's like exploding.
Wow. So did you ever really get to do any mechanic jobs? or did they really just kind of push you to the side? I mean, I know you said it, but I wasn't sure how much of it was, exaggeration for effect because that's how it felt, or
I was a glorified bike cleaner. That was literally my job. So when I first got hired on, the collision center was separate from the dealership. So the service manager wasn't there all the time. So like he wasn't there like monitoring my every move. I had a different boss who was in charge of like the collision part of the dealership. So he was in charge of like accepting insurance and filing those claims for people with like wrecked bikes and that kind of stuff. And then we would fix them. And the only time that I got to work on a bike, 2 times, I got to put the Triumphs together when they came in from boxes, which essentially just putting the acid in the batteries and putting the battery into the bike. And then we got this like 86 Street Glide that like ran into a deer and it was carbureted. And the technician that they had working on those bikes, okay, this is part of the reason that I'm so frustrated. He was younger than me and he didn't know how a carburetor worked. But he was the tech working on all of these bikes.
Wow.
And for the most part, it wasn't a big deal. A lot of collision work is just ordering parts and bolting them back on, there isn't a whole lot of diagnosis involved. They identify the parts that are broken, you put an X on it, you buy new parts, the insurance pays for it. That was the gist of our side of the process. So we got in this when that bike came in and he got all the new parts bolted on, but then the bike wouldn't run because he had to pull the carburetors off. And in the process, he fucked up the float bowls. And oh my God, it was like 3 weeks of torture for me watching him try to figure out how the carburetor worked. And then finally I couldn't stand it anymore. And I was like, just fuck me over so I can fix it. Oh, look, the job got done in 2 days. Huh, who would have thought? It's fine.
It definitely sounds frustrating.
Oh my God.
Kind of good for you for letting him suffer for a while. You know what I mean? Rather than saving his bacon. And then let me ask you this. After that, did he advocate for you at all to start helping all that stuff?
No.
See, that lack of appreciation is just insane for some people, And
part of that was just like the culture around like dealership, like service shops and it's almost, there's very few dealership like service areas that I have dealt with that weren't blatantly misogynistic. And a lot of the techs in the back like were amazing to me, and they would let me stand over them and they would like teach me as they were working on stuff. They had like an incredible amount of patience that a lot of techs don't have. Understandably, because like if you're working on a problem and it's frustrating, you don't want to have to explain what you're doing to somebody else.
Oh yeah.
But everybody in management. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, so when the collision shop got closed and moved to the main body of the dealership, then I wasn't allowed to be on the bikes like at all because the service manager was very strictly, girls don't work on bikes. And when I first got there and I went to the service manager and I asked him, like, what do I do? How do I become a tech for you? Like, this is why I applied for this job. And he said, well, you need to like, do all of the Harley online training and that kind of stuff. And then maybe we'll talk about it. I was like, okay, cool. So I like would spend my free time doing the Harley trainings online. And, in the middle of that process, this kid, like 16-year-old kid, was shadowing one of my favorite techs at the shop. And I was like, who's this kid? Like, is he your son or something? Your cousin? I don't know. And they're like, oh no, that's the new intern. And I was like, what? And I'm like, okay, so he did all the training. No, he didn't do any of the training. But since he was a boy, they decided, oh yeah, he's the new intern. We'll just have you shadow the tech and then you can start working on bikes.
Wow.
And it was later down the road when the collision center got like moved back into the main shop and that kind of stuff, like where like the service manager was just blatantly like, I don't have girl techs in my shop. Girls don't work on bikes. Yeah.
So did you ever move anywhere else than become a tech, where they would actually let you work on the bikes, or did you just move on to a different career path after that?
So I just kind of got, shortly after we got moved back to the collision center, and like, of course, like the main dealership already had a lot tech. So they already had a glorified bike washer. They didn't need me. And then I got moved up into events. So like, and I made pretty decent money doing events. So like didn't have the need to, or like the urge to go find somewhere else to work. Because I did enjoy my work while I didn't always enjoy everybody that I had to work with. I loved doing events. And I got to make all the event posters there. So it was like a double whammy for me. I got to do events. I got paid to make art. Like, and I didn't have to worry about pleasing a specific client. They essentially like let me draw whatever I wanted because it worked on social media. So like I must be doing something right. So no, I didn't try to go find somewhere else to be a tech at. I know that Motor Corsa in town is amazing and an advocate for female techs. They have a female tech there. I think the other Harley-Davidson dealership across town has a female tech now, which I think is hilarious. But the Honda dealer is also not super. Yeah.
So then after the marketing side and the events, where did you go? Is that how you ended up at REI, or did you?
Yes, that's how I ended up at REI. Yeah. So they let me go, and they didn't really give me a reason. That I had been working on a project, like the event for the weekend all day. It was a Friday, and at the end of the day, they called me and they need to talk to me. Like, we're letting you go. You're being laid off. You have a right of refusal if and when we can afford to hire you back again. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, how much time do I have to get all my stuff together? I was like, oh, you're leaving today. You have 1 hour to pack up your stuff. And I was like,
wow.
Who's going to do the event that I just spent all day working on? You know, like I need to transfer all this stuff over. Like, nope. And so it took me a while to get over it because I thought that I was going to be there forever. like I like as much of the job that was frustrating and stressful, I loved it there. I was the longest events person that they've ever had. Like before me, like they were lucky if they could get somebody to stay for 9 months, and I was there for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was completely out left field for me. I was not expecting it at all. And so it took me a while to get over. And then I finally started applying at jobs like 2 or 3 months later. And because I kind of just whammied down on YouTube and Patreon and illustration, that kind of stuff. And that kind of got me by for a while. And like finally my boyfriend is like, you need to get another job. I'm like, okay, fine. And that's how I ended up at REI, and REI has been wonderful.
So did you keep in touch with anyone from the dealership after you left, or did you pretty much
a couple people? Yeah. Like Carl, we did Carl's MotoRadds together. He's in a couple of my videos. Like he's in the Cabder videos and, like 1 or 2 videos before that. And all the videos that I made for Carl's MotoRad are still on my channel as well. And if you go to the Carl's MotoRad like YouTube channel, I made all those videos up until like the last 2 I think they put up was after I left. And of course that quickly died after I left because I found out who was doing all the work.
So did you maybe in any back channels hear rumors about why? Was it just a money issue where they just had to make a cut somewhere, or
part of it was because like the general manager that was in charge at the time was doing everything he could to cut anybody who was making more than minimum wage. the like kind of months leading up to it, like they had been in the process of cutting a lot of people who had been there for a really long time. Like citing really weird reasons to get rid of somebody. Like there was this gal who was essentially like, was shop mom, essentially. Like she was, our quote unquote HR person. She wasn't officially, because they got rid of our HR person. But she took care of all of us, and she made sure that like everybody's birthday got recognized, and like making sure that like if any of us had issues, like they were brought to the attention of managers when like we didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. Stuff like that. And she had been with the dealership for like 25, 28 years, and they got rid of her.
Wow.
Claiming that like she started talking back to the general manager or something like that. And it was more because since she had been there so long, she was making more than base wage because she had been given raises over the years. Same thing with me, because I was making more than base wage, because when they moved me from a lot tech to events coordinator, they wanted me to work 5 to 6 days a week. And I was cleaning houses on the side and doing YouTube and doing illustration, that kind of stuff. And I was like, I can't work full time here and still do all my other stuff. And so he said like, well, how much do we have to pay you to make it worth your time, so you don't do those other jobs anymore? And I gave him my number, and he said, fine. And evidently 2 years down the line, that wasn't fine anymore. And so they got rid of me. They got rid of the gal and a couple of techs that had been there forever. Yeah. And then, ironically, that general manager left 4 months later.
So then you think that he was directed to make those cuts, though, and that's maybe one of the reasons why he left? Or do you think that that was his own objective, and then he left because you had a brain drain now that you fired everyone with experience?
I think it was probably partially directed by the gal they had in charge of their finance department. She was doing everything she could to cut all the fat, essentially, to make the business run leaner. Because like Harley's been having a hard time. All dealerships are having a hard time. But I don't think that's why he left. He left because he has a pattern of only working at a business for 3 to 4 years, and then he moves on to the next thing. Before he was general manager at a Harley-Davidson dealership, he had been like a serial manager for a bunch of used car dealerships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's tough to know what the motivation behind that is, right? Because to some degree, one strategy to make sure that your own salary is increasing is you stay 2 to 3 years per job, and then you make a jump right after you get a raise, so that you get like a double raise in 1 year if you negotiate right. And the other side, it's you can't keep everything together more than a couple of years before everything starts to fall apart, and you need to get out before everyone discovers.
Yeah.
The
feed for me down the grapevine was also because not to be super gossip, that sounds bad, but the feed down the grapevine was like partially he had like come to his pattern of getting ready to go, and then he pissed off a bunch of the other managers, and it was revealed all of the shitty things he was doing to all of us. And so I think that it was kind of a mutual, you should go now, and also, I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Yeah. That makes it rough,
Yeah.
For me, people can make or break a job. I mean, I've been at my current company for, I don't know. I think I started there in 2006, 2007. I'm still there now. And, the reason I stay is the people have been great to work with.
Yeah.
It's not like the pay is amazing. You know what I mean? It's a small company, or it was. We just got acquired by a gigantic company. But prior to now, it's been a small company, so the pay wasn't fantastic or anything. But the work atmosphere, having people who care, makes a huge difference in your day.
Yes, yeah, and I had made like a tiny family. There was like 3 people at the dealership that I genuinely always knew would have my back, and Carl was one of them. and one of them was one of the techs, and then one of them was the part of the parts counter that only serves the shop side. And I knew that if I was having a bad day, I could go and hide behind his desk and he would let me vent. And before I went back up to my office, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
And I miss those people a lot. Carl doesn't work there anymore. Carl has moved to North Carolina, and I did manage to go see him on my big trip, but I will miss him.
So I see you've been putting out some of the videos from your big trip now. How many do you think it's going to be in the series?
I'm aiming for 10.
Aiming for 10. Okay.
Yes.
And I think
so,
like 3 is what you're out right now, 4 maybe?
3 will come out next Friday, this upcoming Friday. What is that, the 11th? Okay. I think the 11th, the next one comes out. We're at 2 right now. And I know that I like put out like 22 episodes or whatever for the pilgrimage, but I was on the road for like 70 days.
Yeah.
This was significantly shorter. I was on the road for 24 days, and I was only really traveling for 22 of those days, thanks to my brother.
I saw that. That was
yeah.
I mean, you talked about it in one of your interviews about one of the benefits of traveling alone is you don't get holed up by anyone.
Yes. Yes.
It's a good thing you love him, right?
Yes, it's definitely a good thing that I love him. I would have enjoyed having him along for the rest of the trip if he would have been able to like work it out with his work. Because my brother and I just like work very well together. It's kind of the same dynamic that I had with Carl, which is why I didn't mind riding with Carl, is because like Carl and Gary are very go with the flow people. So at no point do I feel like I'm holding them up because they don't care. Like, and I'm like, I want to go see that thing. Okay, we'll go. Doesn't matter, and doesn't matter if I'm going to stop and play with my drone for an hour and it's going to make it so we get to the hotel in the dark. That doesn't matter. And that's why I enjoy riding with both of them so much, because they're very glow with the flow people. Like, maybe that says something about how controlling I am. I don't know.
Well, I relate because I travel a lot alone too. And I always feel like I am a go with the flow, relaxed kind of person until I'm traveling with someone, and I realize I just want to do what I want to do.
Yes.
And it's like, I tell myself this is not just my trip, like I'm here with someone, whatever. But at the same time, it's like you travel by yourself and you're able to make every one of those decisions. Like I want to, because I love to walk cities. That's sort of been my thing before motorcycles. And it's like I have a kind of a list of things I want to do. But if I get distracted because I find like an alley or something I want to walk down and explore, then I do it and I don't sweat it, So what do you think was the highlight of this trip, would you say? Do you have one, or is the whole thing a highlight reel?
Oh God. That's hard. I think my first highlight was like getting to meet so many other women motovloggers. That was amazing. And when I was making the route, my boyfriend was laughing at me because he's like, "You're just doing a tour of motovloggers of the United States," because like I just like pinpointed like all the motovloggers like where I knew where they were, and then I made my route around it. Like, I obviously get to like time to meet all the ones that I had wanted to meet, but getting to meet Whit Mesa and Megan Stark and her two wheels and Doodle on a motorcycle was incredible. And I'm just like there's nothing compared to getting to actually sit down with somebody who identifies with you and can relate to all of the ups and downs of being a female creator in our niche. It's amazing. And like being a YouTuber is inherently lonely. Like we spend a lot of the time by ourselves. It's a lot of filming by yourself. It's a lot of editing by yourself and then putting that video up. And then dealing with all of the comments, good and bad, that come as a result. And so whenever I get the opportunity to hang out with a YouTuber, just even YouTubers in general, it doesn't have to be in the motorcycle niche, like somebody who gets that workflow, who gets what's involved, all the technical aspects of it, it's incredible. And even more so, like getting to meet other like motorcycle creators like in our niche is just so cool. And the next highlight that I would say is like how surprised I was by South Dakota. Like the Black Hills was amazing, and not just because I'm a huge 19th century nerd and Deadwood is like Disneyland to me. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, I could spend a week in that town. But like Custer State Park was incredible. The Badlands was amazing. Although I will say, I think that I still prefer Makoshka State Park over the Badlands. And I know a lot of people will be upset with me about that, but I don't care. It's still a very similar natural feature. You know, like what the Badlands is known for is like that, like epic. I don't even know what you would call that kind of that geological feature. Where, anyway, same kind of scenery, maybe not on a massive scale as Badlands, but less people and less people, and like it being right next to a town like that, there's just, I don't know. It was more magical in my opinion than Badlands. And there was more areas to get out of the sun as well in Makoshka State Park than there was in the Badlands. My brother and I got almost had heat stroke because we couldn't get out of the sun. And of course we were there during the middle of the day like dum-dums.
It happens. I can kind of relate though, because I prefer the Painted Desert over the Grand Canyon, and everyone thinks I'm insane. You know, like how the Grand Canyon's the greatest, and I'm just like, I prefer the Painted Desert.
Yeah. And then my last highlight would probably be West Virginia, even though it's also like the worst part of the trip for me. West Virginia was a beautiful ride again, like best campsite on the whole trip besides the one in Montana. And because I like got to roll in, I got to set up my tent when it wasn't dark. First time on the whole trip that I got to set up my tent or like even roll into a place to stay before it was dark. And I got to eat before it got dark. It was beautiful and serene. And then the next morning it poured on me. It flooded my campsite. My gear epically failed. Ooh. I was wet and miserable. It took me 4 hours to get into town because I couldn't go more than 25 miles per hour because my rear tire was bald. Ooh. Going over West Virginia hills in the downpour, which of course I later realized was like the leftover part of the tropical storm that went through. So go figure.
I used to drive through West Virginia because when I lived in DC, my ex-wife's family was from Quincy, Illinois, which is actually mm-hmm. where I used to live in Illinois as well. And you drive through West Virginia as you're going from DC to Illinois. Mm-hmm. And one year we were going during the winter, and it was snowing. And of course I love the snow, as you know. And the lines, the lines to the windshield wiper fluid froze. You know, so we couldn't clear the snow and ice off of the windshield without stopping somewhere. And we were going through those mountains that you're talking about, and there's nowhere to stop without worrying about someone ramming you from behind.
Yeah.
So it was the sketchiest ride back to Illinois I think I've ever experienced. And yeah. My only worst experience in commuting in a state is Tennessee. And that one was just, I was going from California to DC via car, but I was waiting tables at the time. So every day that I didn't work, I didn't make any money. Mm-hmm. And I was broke, so I was trying to book it back to DC, and I did it in 3.5 days, and I would have done it quicker, but my parents offered to pay for gas if I would promise to stay in a hotel at least one night. Because prior to that, I was just stopping at rest stops and sleeping in the car.
Yeah.
And by the time I got into Tennessee, I was going diagonally, like tip to tip through Tennessee, and there was construction. I swear to God, from the minute I got into Tennessee to the minute I left Tennessee, and because of the traffic, it put me in Nashville right at rush hour.
Oh God.
And I had the whole thing planned out so I would miss rush hour in Nashville.
Oh,
And all that construction was like, you tried, but you failed.
Yes.
Welcome.
I meant to go to Nashville on that trip. I didn't manage to get there. I did roll through Memphis, and wow, no offense to anybody who lives in Memphis, but I have never seen so much trash on a sidewalk in my life.
Go to London.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was shocked in some cities in Europe, London and Glasgow or Dublin, one of the two, where I told you I like to walk cities. So I'm walking all these neighborhoods, and people were just piling garbage places. You know how some houses have like a lower level, it might be a basement, might just be kind of built on a hill, and there's that window that has like a hole drilled into the ground, and then there's a window.
Yes.
People were filling those with garbage.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, the poor saps that have to use that window, their entire view is just,
oh my God.
A window full of garbage that people are just too lazy to put in a garbage can. Which, like many cities, there's garbage cans all over the place. So I didn't understand why people were just chucking it down these little window wells.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's new. So now you've done, 3 or 4 trips now in the U.S. that are pretty long.
Yeah.
And one down to Baja.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any plans on going outside the country further to do some trips like this?
I still need to get to Canada. I feel silly for being a Montanan and never having been to Canada, right next to the border. But after Baja, it made me realize like just how much of the U.S. that I haven't seen. Because I don't know if you would agree with me, but like one of the things that like I felt very inadequate about is like people would ask me about what it's like in the U.S. Like, what is it like in your country? Or have you been to this place? And I had to be like, no, I haven't been there. Like I've been all over the West Coast, but like I really haven't got to explore like the whole of the United States. And so coming back from Baja, like I was like very much like any kind of like idea that I had about riding in different countries kind of went out the window, because I'm like, I need to experience the country that we have at our fingertips right now first before I go out and like start doing all this other extra stuff. I don't know. That was my thought process anyway. And even like this trip was like really only like the beginning, because I missed like the whole of like New England, like the Northeast, and a lot of the South. Yeah, I still have a lot to experience before, like, I think that I don't know what that feeling is, like the urge to keep going further will push me into other areas.
I think if you wanted to, you could spend a lifetime exploring the United States. There's just so much here, so I totally understand that. Every time I go somewhere new in the US, it's like, oh my God, how have I not been here before? How have I not done this before? But at the same time, because I grew up in a military family and I moved to like a few different countries and things like that, I also know what it's like to be somewhere. And I really enjoy being somewhere where I don't speak the language, and I've really got to, how to explain it? You really have to pay attention and work to do the things that you want to do. Mm-hmm. Plus, I enjoy meeting people with different views and seeing different architectures and ways of life and things like that. And, it's just, I guess, just a passion of mine, the same way some people have, the passion to do dirt biking or whatever else. But yeah, I think my goal next is to try to get out to Norway. There are some roads out in Norway that I was seeing that I think would be just fantastic to ride a motorcycle on. Yeah.
I mean, like, I really like, and people have asked me in Q&As before, like, if money was no option, like no obstacle, I'd be like, well, I want to ride through China. and I really want to see Mongolia. Like those are top on my list. I also really want to experience Japan, but I'm not sure that I would ride through Japan.
Japan's been my favorite trip of my life so far. Yeah, it checks so many boxes for me. So yeah, I think if you get an opportunity, even if you don't ride out there, I would
Yeah.
highly suggest a trip to Japan, especially if you love art.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
oh my God, like you wouldn't think a garden could be art
Oh no,
until
it
you see the
absolutely is.
way the Japanese do gardens. It is just mind blowing sometimes. The attention to detail that you can with a living thing. I mean, plants are these
Yeah.
living things, and they. Oh, anyway, I could
Yes.
go on
No,
it.
totally. My boyfriend's mother is a landscape designer,
Ah,
and she, oh my God, she does incredible things with people's backyards. Like I would not think. Yeah. Anyway, agreed. Landscape is art.
all right. Well, I think let's see. I've kept you here over 2 hours at this point. Um,
Have you gotten through your question list though? I know that
I
we kind of
have
detoured a little bit.
I have so much I could keep asking you. Um, I mean, one of the things that I was curious about, and maybe we'll just go this direction. You just tell me when you're tired of talking to me.
Okay.
Who, when I was reading about you, you'd mentioned your older brother was teaching you art,
Mhm.
and your grandfather got you into motorcycles. I'm wondering, who do you think in your life had the biggest influence on you in general?
My grandmother.
Your grandmother?
Mhm.
And why? What was her influence on you? Like, what did you learn from her?
She was my role model. She was my caretaker. She was the woman who told me I could do anything if I wanted to. Um, we'll see if I can talk about this and not cry. um, she's my paternal grandmother, so she's my dad's mom.
Hmm.
And my dad was always working on the ranch, and my mom was always like working the day job. She was our breadwinner, so she worked a lot. And when she came home, she had a lot of migraines because she was very stressed, like all the time. So my grandmother is the one who picked me up from school. I hung out with my grandmother. Like she was my best friend. She was my caretaker. Like she is the one who inspired me to love travel. Like ever since I was little, like we would do family trips and that kind of stuff, but they were all instigated by my grandma. Like every summer we would go to Flathead Lake as a family in a motorhome. And but also when I was like in third grade, like we did a big loop of Montana, like in a car. And she has been all over the world. She had been all over the world. And like had all these like magnets from all the places that she went to, and instilled in me that like you can't wait until one day, you have to do it now or it's not going to happen. And always like, and like my dad did this for me too, like my mom did it for me too, like trying to instill in me like anything a boy can do you can do too, like just because like so much of like rural Montana culture is very traditional, and the sense that like and roles and that kind of stuff, unless you're a ranch kid, in which case everybody does the work, doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
And so, but like my grandmother really, and I think that part of that was like inspired by her experience with her first husband, really being rooted into the role as the housekeeper and the housewife, taking care of the kids and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until she like married her second husband that she really got to blossom as a person. And I think that part of her experience in life like that is the reason that she worked so hard to make sure that sorry,
Hmm.
that she worked so hard to make sure that I knew that if I put my mind to something that I could do it.
Well,
She
her
passed
legacy.
away in 2011. So
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah. Ugh.
Well, just know, I mean, she's indirectly inspired so many people because I know so many people who mention your name when I talk to them about, who they look up to when it comes to writing. So, I mean, your grandmother's legacy is growing every year, you know. So,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's understandable. I mean, you cared about her, right? She did a lot for you. So, I mean, it would be weird if you didn't get emotional for someone who had such an impact on your life. I wonder if you're one of the like upgraded humans and you're like a robot or something, like the new bikes have all the electronics.
But like also like I owe so much to Gary for everything that he like did to inspire me with art and that kind of stuff. Like I would not be where I am if he hadn't like taught me what he knew when he was coming home from school and that kind of stuff. And my grandpa just, for telling a little girl, I was like 6 when he told me I could have that bike. I was so young. And then coming to and living with him, and he's like, yeah, that bike is still there. Like, and like encouraging me to go take the safety course and encourage me to work on the carbs myself. That kind of stuff. Like my grandpa is very much like a time is money kind of person. And if you don't have the money, I guess you're going to spend the time.
Yep.
So like without him there to push me and that kind of stuff, like I would not have gotten into working on bikes at all. Like it was like a result of being poor and having a old bike.
Mm-hmm. Necessity is a mother invention, as they say.
Yes. And then like, like my parents are incredible humans. Like they had like without them, obviously like Rocky Mountain Rolls wouldn't still be happening. Because I would have stopped. Like, and my dad is like, I'm so grateful to have such an incredible father. Like, anytime any one of us kids needs help, he drops whatever he's doing and he is right there. And he will sell everything that he owns to make sure that we have what we need. And he's so cool. Just.
I mean, it sounds like a great dad, right? I mean,
yeah.
Just because your kids are adults doesn't mean that they're not your kids anymore.
Yes.
So.
Like when I broke down on the Cabder, I was like, Yuma, Arizona, like just north of Yuma, Blythe. That's where we were.
Ah, okay.
And my dad was like, well, I can get down there and like I could be there in about 12 hours and blah blah blah. And I was like, no, Dad, it's gonna cost the same amount of money for you to come down here in gas as it's gonna be for me to replace my clutch. Like I'm just gonna go replace my clutch, it'll be fine. Like and when I did the pilgrimage, like every time I broke down, my dad was like, well, I can be there in like, how many hours and we can come and get you and it'll be okay. And I was like, it'll be fine. I need to do this. It'll be okay. But like going to art school, I also got to hear about a lot of other families that were not so awesome. So it just makes me even more grateful to have parents that are incredibly supportive.
Well, it sounds like you had someone there to be the example and to inspire you, right, and encourage you on one hand. And then on the other hand, you've got someone there who's telling you over and over that they're your safety net, so yeah. You got this sweet spot where you're getting the inspiration and the push to try things, and then you get the other person filling in on the role as safety net. Like, yeah, do follow what this person's telling you, because I'm going to be there to help pick up the pieces if anything goes wrong. I mean, that really sounds like a strong family support system. I mean, you really couldn't ask for anything more, right? At that point. Like, if I had to put together my dream team of situations in life for myself, like, I don't know what else I could ask for. I mean, support and inspiration, and then support and a safety net. That's just
yes, yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, I can't leave out my other grandmother. She's incredible. Like the only reason I have a computer or my phone or even like my tattoo machines when I started tattooing was because like my other grandmother made that happen. So yeah, I'm just incredibly lucky. Yeah,
no, it honestly, it's the truth, because like you said, there's not a lot of people have that. And, just like you probably didn't realize your the situation regarding your guys' wealth or not, or lack thereof, until you went and interacted with other people. You may not have even fully appreciated all the support and inspiration you were getting at home until you meet people who have the complete opposite, you know. Like, oh, you can't do that, you know, you're a girl and blah blah blah. Like, I hear way too many of those stories, to be honest, in my own personal life.
Yeah. I'm not like saying that mom and dad were thrilled when I picked up the motorcycle, but they also didn't tell me I couldn't. Like,
well, and they probably weren't telling you couldn't because you were a girl, but more that they were just concerned about your safety, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Which is a whole different animal.
Yes. Yeah, my mom's mom, so my other grandmother, the one that's still alive, like when my parents told them I was going to go across the country, like she came to Rocky Mountain Roll. She normally comes to Rocky Mountain Roll to like say hi to everybody as they roll in, and she sat me down. She's like, "We have to talk," and I was like, "Oh God, you're taking away my phone? Is that what?" And she's like, like, it's different over there, you know, people over there aren't like over here. Like, she was so freaked out, like that I was going to get hurt or that something terrible was going to happen to me. And it was adorable. And like, and still, like, she wasn't telling me that I couldn't do it. She was just saying that she was genuinely concerned for my safety, and to make sure that I like was doing everything I could do to be safe. Which is like part of the reason, like, I didn't post where I was like the whole time I was on the trip. Like, I know a lot of people are really upset that like I'm posting photos after I'm back, but like part of that is just safety, you know, like, the people that I stayed with knew where I was, obviously, but like, they were really good about like posting about where I was, like after I wasn't there anymore, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, complacency kills, they say, in motorcycles, right? But the same thing is true in life. I mean, you have to take some prudent precautions for your own personal safety. You can't trust that everyone's going to be good, even though I fully believe most people are.
Yes, definitely.
That doesn't mean
and
that there's,
like, if anything is going to like put your faith in humanity again, it's a motorcycle trip, like long distance, for sure. But at the same time, like, faith in humanity in person is different than faith in humanity on the internet.
Definitely. Well, you definitely got some good advice then or good encouragement to pursue safety as a priority instead of, an afterthought like some people do. And then, there's no medicine for regret, they say.
Yes, absolutely.
Much easier to apologize to people about not putting up a photo. Yes,
exactly. And like, planning this trip was so much different than planning a pilgrimage, because when I was on the pilgrimage, I think like I had like 600 followers on Instagram, nobody who knew I was there, like 20 subscribers on YouTube. Like, I think on average, if you like scroll all the way back to that section of my Instagram, there's like maybe 100 likes per post. And it's different now. A lot more people are watching what I'm doing. And while I know that the majority of my audiences are incredible, like, I am so lucky to have an incredible audience that is very supportive. And I feel like when I go from my comment section to like the comment section of other female creators on YouTube, I feel incredibly lucky. I don't get near the amount of hate and just like atrocious comments that other people get. So in that sense, like, I'm so grateful. But I'm also hyper aware that like a lot of those people, like, even though their intentions are good, may not understand that they're putting me in an uncomfortable situation or something. So I was hyper aware that I was going to have to go about this trip a little bit different than I did the pilgrimage. And that, not posting where I was when I was there was part of it.
What of the trips that you've taken so far, what do you think has been the most meaningful trip?
The pilgrimage.
Okay. Was it because it was one of your first on your own, or was it because it was sort of a celebration of accomplishment, or why was that one the most meaningful?
So I started riding in 2012, and like all the trips I did, like, were by myself. I didn't ride with anybody. I didn't even know other people who rode until after I'd been riding for a good year and a half. I had like no idea about like this huge culture around motorcycling. I had no idea. I think I joined the Torque Wenches like uh 2014, 2013, something like that. I had already been riding for a while before like I started like getting into like the whole motorcycle community as a whole. And the pilgrimage is important to me because I was in a like abusive situation, like abusive mentor, who essentially had convinced me for 3 years that I was a piece of shit and that I wasn't worth anything.
Wow.
And so much of that trip, and the reason that it like I started just as a loop of Montana. I didn't even intend to go down to Utah and then go back up. That kind of got added on as a last minute thing because I kind of posted as a joke, hey, does anybody want to buy me a ticket to Motos in Moab? Because I wasn't going to spend $70 on a ticket to an event. And one of the very few people who were following my blog at the time, bought my ticket for me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh,
Guess
I
you're
didn't
going.
think this was gonna, okay, we're going now. My intention was just to like go over to Montana and then do the whole loop. And part of that was like getting back to my roots, back to the place, like I said, like where things felt possible. And try to reground myself and figure out who I was again, because like I totally lost like my lust for life. Essentially, like I wouldn't eat more than once a day because I didn't want to eat, and I had like a lot of really dark thoughts and didn't want to exist anymore when I worked at the tattoo shop, because my mentor did such a good job.
Well, let me ask you, how did she get so much influence over you, do you think, that you would internalize the negativity that she was throwing your way so much?
A lot of it had to do with like she was my only social interaction in the summertime a lot. I was living with my grandpa at the time, and so like I would go from my room to the shop, and we weren't a busy shop, so if I was lucky we would get Emma walk in like maybe twice a week. But I was spending every single day there in the summertime. So it was just her and like I think one other tattoo artist in the shop. He didn't really talk a whole lot, so I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. And then there was kind of a revolving door of other artists who were guest spotting there. And they had a varying range of opinions about how my mentor was treating me. Some thought that she wasn't treating me harsh enough, and some thought that it was outrageous the way she was treating me. And part of that is just like tattoo culture, because like if you don't go the school route, and you do the traditional being an apprentice for somebody, a lot of the culture in tattoo shops is that you are the shop dog and you do absolutely anything anybody asks you to do the whole time you're an apprentice. And that is how you build character, and that's how you learn how to work. And that is a very cyclical culture, because if you were treated like crap when you were an apprentice, of course you're going to treat your apprentice like crap, because you think it's justified. And I have always had a very like healthy, I wouldn't say fear of authority, but like a very healthy, like you are older and wiser than me. And especially her being my mentor, I'm like taking everything that she says as gospel, because like I want to learn, I want to get better. And I guess you could say that's a character flaw. I don't know. But like, obviously, like it never backfired on me in Montana. Like I always treated all of my elders with respect and always knew that they had something that I didn't know that I could learn from. Whether they always had the same opinions as me or not, that didn't matter. So going into like jobs with that kind of mentality, like wasn't super beneficial to me.
Yeah. Did you talk to anyone though, like your brother, your grandma, your dad, anyone like your grandfather who you were living with, about the situation to sort of get some outside perspective on what was happening? Because it sounds like you're surrounded with people with really great heads on their shoulders,
Yeah.
and you have a great head on your shoulders. So it seems, I guess it's so hard to reconcile, like, this vile person was able to have such an influence over you, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I called my parents like at least twice a week, crying because I was very upset. And most of the time, like the side that they were experiencing was just like the side where like I was directly responding to something stupid that she did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just angry first. And that's normally my response. I'm angry first and then I get really sad.
Yeah.
And so most, like, I'm not sure that they even knew how much of in a dark place that I was in. I know that they knew that I wasn't like being treated right and like that I was frustrated all the time. But I don't think they knew like mentally in what kind of a dark place I was, like the majority of the time that I like wasn't at work. And otherwise I'm sure like they would have done their best to like get me out of that kind of situation. But also we were all incredibly stubborn and I was going to stick out my apprenticeship because I said that I was going to. And I did.
But the unfortunate part seems to be that you didn't then pursue tattooing on your own afterwards. So it seems almost like you accomplished your goal, but then the real goal should have been to use all that experience and knowledge to, you know, help you live, right? Like make some money and do something you enjoy, where you can interact with people on your own terms and over art. 'Cause it sounds like on paper, it sounds like it'd be an ideal job for you.
Yeah, on paper.
Yeah, on paper. Because again, you're getting paid for art and you can book as many or as few appointments as you want. So if you're having one of those days where you don't want to interact with people, it's like, okay, then you don't. And then when you
the main obstacle to tattooing after I quit was I did my apprenticeship in Washington. And 3 years instead of the standard 4 because I already knew how to draw, or at least that was the excuse she gave me, that she cut it down to 3 instead of 4 because she didn't have to teach me how to draw. Instead, I drew all of her tattoos. Anyway, that's besides the point. So I was tattooing in Washington. I didn't have my license until the last year because she said that it was fine because I was tattooing on her license. It's not fine. I was supposed to have a license from the beginning. And I don't know if she did this directly because she knew it would be impossible for me to find work in another shop, or if it's just because maybe she got a notification that she was going to get an OSHA violation if I didn't get my license. I don't know. But I only had a license in Washington for 1 year. And in Oregon, in order to tattoo in Oregon, you have to have evidence that you were licensed in a different state for 4 years and evidence that you pay taxes on that income as a tattoo artist for that amount of time. So I wasn't even close to that. Or you have to go to an Oregon tattoo school, which is $8,000. Was $8,000. It's much more now. It's like an 8 to 16 week program.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I wasn't going to pay $8,000 to learn something that I already knew how to do. So then the other option left to me was like try to get licensed in Montana and then like try to find a shop that would let me guest spot like every month or something. But there's like, I ended up kind of like working out the amount of money that it would take for me to get to Montana to be able to tattoo enough to make enough money to pay taxes on that income in Montana, to have evidence for 4 years to get licensed in Oregon. It's like not worth it.
Or you could move to Montana permanently.
And you know, it's like that's still a possibility. Like if and when like we end up in Montana to like I'll pick up tattooing again there because I still have all of my equipment and like I practice every great once in a while like on the sheets of fake skin and that kind of stuff. And I do genuinely and love tattooing. It's so cool.
Well, and I was reading that it actually influenced your art in other mediums too, right? Like thinking about the way the colors didn't blend as much as they kind of faded, right, from like one color
Yes.
to the next.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I said, reading about it, I thought that would be like one of the perfect professions for you, you know.
Yeah.
But again, this is another aspect where I say, you know, the internet and social media can make it feel like you know someone better than you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like I've been interacting with you for a long time. And the reality is like, no, you're only seeing what's put out there.
Yeah.
So
I will say that like it's kind of cool. I know that like a lot of people think it's weird, but I think it's cool to like meet people who have been like interacting with my content for a long time in person, because it reduces like the amount of awkwardness that I feel, because I don't have to explain to you all of my beliefs and what I think and what I've been through, because you already know. So I get to spend all the time listening to your stories, and it's my favorite.
I mean, the flip side and the danger is that then people like me make you know, guesses about things. Like we start to fill in our own blanks, because that's what the brain does, right? The brain fills in blanks. It's what it does all day long. And enough information, then you start to be like, well, I know that Amanda Zito would do this and say this. And meanwhile, I could be 100% wrong, and so can everyone else. And, you know, well, let's see. I think
for the most part, like I think everybody knows the important things, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, every creature or every human, I feel like, talks about the things that are the most important to them the most often, you know, and especially with new people. So every time you're having an interview, or, you know, someone's writing an article or something, and they're asking you for the important things, you would think, unless you're schizophrenic or something, not to say there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it's could be an issue, right? But you'd expect some sort of consistency in the answers. So through your tattoos, I mean, we didn't really touch on your bikes that much, but I feel like you talked about them a lot. So
or at least Briarios and Lazarus, and you know, they're the stars of the show. So
I guess as an update in or an exercise in just fantasy, what do you think your next bike will be?
Part of me would say a dirt bike, because I don't have a dirt bike. That's really the biggest hole in my collection. Because that's what it is at this point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest hole in my collection, is that I don't have a dirt bike. And it would be so fun just to have a dirt bike to rip around on our property, because of that gnarly ravine that goes down the middle. I did try to take Briarios down it when I first got him, because I was like, oh yeah, I have a bike that has a suspension, it can do all this shit. I got thoroughly stuck. It took me 2 hours to get myself out, just because of the steepness, and everything is covered in like pine needles, so it's slick as hell. But like, I'm like, oh yeah, I had a little dirt bike, like a 250 or something, that would be super fun. I really, really love Huskies. I got the opportunity to ride somebody's Husky, like 250, and then like a KTM. And I know they're made by the same company now, but the Huskies' power delivery felt so much smoother.
So you have to remember, I've only been riding motorcycles since April. So when you say Huskies, you're talking about Husqvarnas?
Husqvarna, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know the nickname was Husky, so.
Yes, the joke is that they're white KTMs.
Yeah, I've been seeing some motorcycle content recently by like Yami Noob or whatever, talking about how it's like, this is basically the same bike, but it's got different branding.
Yes, it's different branding. I think the way that they tune the engine is different on the Huskies than it is on the KTMs, and KTMs are really like designed for like raw power delivery, or at least that's the way that I would describe it. And so they're really, really great for like riders that are trying to push their bike to like the absolute like max that it can go. Of course, this is all my personal opinion. And like Huskies, like, or at least the ones that I've gotten to ride, like in comparison to the ones that I like of the KTMs that I've gotten to ride, like I feel like Huskies are like, you still get that like beautiful performance, but the delivery is much smoother and a little bit tamer.
One might even say refined.
Yes.
So Before I let you go, there are a couple things that I meant to ask you and I completely forgot because we've just
Totally.
been chatting and chatting.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like to ask women who ride is whether or not they think there's a role for motorcycle manufacturers to play in encouraging women to ride. And if there is, what do you think they can do to move that along?
Trying to ask me the question that I was trying to answer the whole time I worked at the dealership there. I think marketing is such a huge thing, and a lot of brands are doing their best to try to transition and create more marketing that does have female representation. And I appreciate that, but we have a long way to go. And I think part of that is also the responsibility of gear manufacturers creating more gear for women. And I don't mean just like gear for girls and gear for skinny girls, which is what a lot of the market is filling right now, which is awesome because there are a lot of like female riders that are petite and they need gear that fits them too. But there's also a huge gap in the market for gear that fits women who are not petite. And I am one of them. And I feel that a lot anytime that I'm trying to find new gear. I did just dump a ton of money on a Rabbit suit, and I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping that, like, you know, the like Revit's whole representation is that their women's gear is designed by women for women. So I'm hoping it lives up to expectations because it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But like after my Scorpion suit, like totally epically failed in that downpour in West Virginia, I was like, I need something else. I would like to never be wet and miserable again. Thank you. I love my Aerostitch suit. My Aerostitch suit is incredible. Definitely waterproof. So heavy. Oh my God. So heavy.
Perfect for long trips.
Oh yeah. Like, and I've expressed this opinion to other people who own Aerostitch suits, and they're like, what do you mean? And of course, most of those people are men. And I don't know if it's just me or it's just the way that the armor sits on me. The Aerostitch Roadcrafter suit, which is like the full body suit, it comes with its own armor, and that armor is thick. It is not lightweight. It is not D3O by any stretch of the imagination. But like the shoulder armor just sits in such a way that the weight of the whole rest of the suit, even with the waist cinched down as much as I can get it, gives me bruises on my shoulders after the second day.
Wow.
So I kind of stopped using it for long distance trips. It's still like a great like day suit. Like I use it in the wintertime in Portland because I can layer as much as I want underneath of it and stay warm. And then I know that the whole suit's going to keep me dry. Mm-hmm. I have been through, oh my God, so many torrential downpours in that suit and always been dry. So I have complete faith in it, but not great for long distance touring and not super great in the heat. There isn't a whole lot of ventilation. So that keeps me looking for the perfect suit that I don't have to put rain gear over top of. That will be my 3-season suit. You know, it's okay if it doesn't cover me in like the dead of winter. That is all right. That's what I have the Aerostitch for. But getting at least through the summer months and went like spring and fall when I know I'm going to get wet. I'm still looking for it. So I'm knocking on wood that this Revit suit is going to be it.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Sorry, I detoured from the question.
No, I mean, you're basically there. I mean, you answered it by default because the first part of the question was, do you think there even really is a role for, like, do you think it's their responsibility to encourage more women to ride? You know, is there a role for them to do that? And then if so, how? And it sounds like de facto the rest of your answer, the answer is yes, they should be encouraging more women to ride, and representation seems to be the vehicle that you think is going to be the most effective.
I mean, like that's my perspective, of course. I know that everybody else has their own opinion, but I feel like so much of like culture and community is being able to see yourself in the media that you're consuming. And if you are interested in riding and you go and you look up like, you know, like motorcycle, just genre stuff in general, not even just like how to ride, the vast majority of things that you're going to be flooded with first is going to be male dominated. And so if you're a female rider and you're like, oh, I want to learn to ride, and list the media that you start consuming because you're gonna like, you're interested, not necessarily like the technical aspect stuff, not necessarily like learning to ride, that kind of stuff. If you're just like interested in the thing first, you kind of like dive into the surface level of the thing. And the surface level of the motorcycle community right now is very male dominated. That doesn't mean that there aren't female creators like me and Megan and Her Two Wheels and Jocelyn Snow and incredible other women, like women who ride, Elspeth Beard, like Lois Price. I could go on all day. I have a video dedicated to all the like incredible women who inspired me to ride, like Moto Lady and on her bike. But it does take a minute to dig to find us.
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily, for future women who want to ride, you guys in particular are really good at social media marketing. So it's getting less and less difficult to find you.
Yeah, yes.
You know, your search terms don't have to be perfect, and you will come up with some women who ride and are doing the thing, as you like to say.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that like just including more representation of female riders, like in their marketing budgets and as a whole, including their marketing budget for TV and film, because like a lot of like the major brands will give bikes to Hollywood to put in their movie and that kind of stuff, and picking more movies that have like female leads or that kind of stuff and putting them on your bike, you know, that it goes a long way. It sounds super superficial, but it goes a long way.
Well, I think that it's, you know, so much of culture is a bunch of little tiny things adding up, right? Mm-hmm. And one of those elements is what you see in TV, what you see in movies, what you see in magazines, what you read in books, even, you know, like, are the characters in your books riding motorcycles and women? Like, and, you know, it's like, is any one of those things super important? Maybe not. But when you look at all of them together, you know, it's like some, you know, if one person tells you you're too short, right, for something, whatever, who cares? But if everyone you walk by is like, oh, you're too short, you're too short, you're too short, eventually you're going to get a complex, right? Like,
and like, and genuine representation of female riders. I don't just mean like bikini models on bikes. And the race industry is more guilty of that than anything. But
I asked someone once, because they were talking about the bike wash girls at Harley, and I was saying, you know, instead of getting rid of the bike wash girls at Harley, would it be acceptable to add bike wash dudes at Harley?
Yes.
You know, because
I'm 100% for this.
Because then it's kind of still on brand, right? It's like there's eye candy for everyone, though, at that point. And at that point, you're also being inclusive while also objectifying, you know?
I mean, like in an ideal world, we wouldn't objectify people, but obviously that's a part of marketing because sex sells.
To some degree, I think that the objectification of people, and this is going off on a tangent, I suppose, but is partially dependent on choice, I guess.
Yes.
You know, it's like if the people are participating by choice and not by necessity, where it's like if you want to model, you have to do this, you know, that's not a choice. Right.
Yeah.
But if there's a million different choices for pursuing your modeling career, and one of them happens to be a bikini bike wash girl, and you're like, I like washing motorcycles and wearing a bikini, I'm gonna go do that. You know, like that's different in my mind.
Absolutely.
I guess.
That's empowerment. That's not objectification.
Yeah. Well, depending. Yeah. The viewer still
on your perspective,
you.
obviously.
But that's a lot to go into on a motorcycle. But in any case, it's I think
because it's different. It's different to have to show skin to get views versus like showing skin because you are in charge of your body. It's a different perspective.
Because one area I know that I kind of get a little, a little bit concerned with sometimes is people complain about, sexy women on bikes. And the implication is always that if you're sexy on a bike that you don't actually, like, you're not a genuine
Oh
biker,
yeah.
and it's like there are a lot of women who enjoy both being sexy and genuinely enjoy riding motorcycles, and to kind of lump
Yeah.
all the, sexy riders into one category,
Yeah.
to me is a little overboard, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Definitely.
I think women shouldn't have to compromise. Like, if you like being good looking in
Yeah.
every facet of your life, like Chic Riot, for instance. I really like Chic Riot
Yeah.
because
Yes.
Tabitha wanted riding gear that let her still be feminine and pretty while also being safe, and so she went out and developed it.
Yeah.
Because there is a role for people who want to look good. They don't just want to be safe, right? Some people only care about being safe. It's like, I don't make sure the gear fits and it's safe. I'll wear it.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
some people are like, well, I also want to look pretty, so where's my pretty gear?
Yes, exactly.
And that's just as valid to me as someone who's like, gear should be functional and fit right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. The problem is like finding gear that fits right in the first place.
Well, exactly. And I hear
but
that a
no,
lot.
I think everything that she does is so cool and innovative, and you don't see other gear like that. And a lot of other like brands that have popped up trying to fill like the gap in like female riding gear is just like a mega copy of like stuff that's already available commercially. You just took the pink off.
Yeah. Yeah. I just found out about Stellar Motor Brand too.
Yeah.
And I think they've got some really cool stuff out there as well. And I think like you said, like the stuff is out there sometimes. You just have to really look, and it's surprisingly difficult to find, and it shouldn't be that way, especially if you're a big giant company like Biltwell or any of the other major manufacturers. Like, if you want to sell stuff, shouldn't you make sure that it's easy for people to find it?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And then if someone doesn't buy it, you're like, oh, well, this doesn't work, so we're going to stop making it. And it's like, no, you didn't put in any effort. Well, of course no one bought it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think At Wild is doing a decent job of their marketing, but like At Wild is also owned by the ladies who do Babes Right Out, and they have obviously figured out like the jam. Like
And I know I interviewed a woman from She-Wolf Moto Co., and she's not into safety gear yet. She's still on more just fun motorcycle related clothing for women. And she wants to get into safety gear, but it's a really, there's a lot to take into account.
Yeah, it's really difficult to get off the ground if you don't have a lot of capital to start off with.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many safety considerations too, like learning about the different type of stitching and the materials and it's just on and on. I'm amazed more every day about how Tabitha and Kid went about getting that company off the ground,
Totally.
and doing such a good job with it. So
yeah, absolutely. Like there's so much like technical aspects to like riding gear that like we don't think about, and especially like newer riders who think like leather is the only way to go. Like and I was there too. Like I did the leather and like the weirdly sized leather jacket because it's the only one I could get, so it was too short in the torso for me. And chaps. Like,
do you have pictures of you in a leather jacket and chaps? Because that would be really fun. I think anyone looks funny in leather jackets and chaps. Like, I don't understand how that ever became popular, to be honest.
Yes. Well, like chaps was just an adaptation of what the cowboys were already wearing.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. I just don't get the chaps thing, but probably because I didn't grow up with it, right? I didn't grow up in a town where cowboys were wearing chaps, but I think more village people than like legitimate cowboys. So
yeah, in my family, chaps were made fun of because you only wear chaps if you can't handle a saddle. So like part of the reason chaps like crotchless and you don't have cover your butt because that's the part you're in your saddle, but it covers your thighs because everybody would get saddle sores, which is literally from your thighs rubbing the saddle. Because you're not moving with the horse properly. It has all to do with how you're riding the horse, but that's different. thing. Anyway, that's
No,
why
I
chaps exist.
'cause I had no idea, you know. I mean, I guess I'm more of a city boy in the way I was raised because I was always on like military bases or, you know, military housing and things like that. So I've never had any interaction with people who wore chaps for a legitimate reason. Like I said,
Yeah.
my impression of chaps was always from like music, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
that
then
makes
like
sense.
professional bull riders wear chaps because like you know you're going to come off the bull. So and whether you're hitting dirt or something harder, it's still an abrasion. So that's and also because it's flashy and everything about bull riding is flashy.
Yeah. Did you go to any rodeos when you were in Montana? Do they have rodeos in Montana?
They do have rodeos in Montana.
Okay.
We were not rodeo people.
Was that like a redneck leg too far or like...
I think that there's a little bit of a misconception about like who rodeos are made for, and people who do rodeo, you have to have money to start. So because you have to pay the fee to get into the rodeo, and then you know you have to have money to have the horse trailer and all the equipment involved, and that kind of stuff. So like everybody who did rodeo in my school, like were from families that were much more well off than we were. Like horses were for work, like, and we didn't even have horses. Like once we actually moved up to the ranch, and like we did everything on like 4-wheelers and 3-wheelers and that kind of stuff. Rodeo is like its own culture. And a lot of that culture is from kids who like come from families that had enough money to have horses that were specifically trained to do those kinds of things, because like you can spend a stupid amount of money on a horse that is specifically trained to be a barrel racer. One of the Tennessee Walkers that we rescued was a retired barrel racer because like she went down and she went lame. So that meant like after she recovered, when she cantered, she crossed her back legs, which is like not okay when you're doing rodeo. Because like if she, as I found out, because this is how I broke my tailbone, if she gets going and she trips herself, she goes down no matter how fast she's going. And so my dad was like, well, you didn't learn to ride bareback first. You're just a poser. And of course he was just making fun of me, giving me a hard time. And so I was like, I'll show you I can ride bareback. I went out there not thinking about the fact that my horse was a barrel racer, and like they're trained, if you like squeeze, they go faster. How do you stay on a horse without a saddle? You squeeze. She took off. She crossed her back legs. She went down. I went over her. She rolled over top of me, kicked me, and I broke my tailbone.
You literally bust your ass.
I literally bust my ass. Anyway, all that to say that like rodeo is a super niche thing, and horses that are trained to do rodeo are incredibly expensive. And so in order to do well in rodeo, to get the pot, to make it a viable thing to do, you have to have a whole lot of money to start.
It takes money to make money, as they say.
Exactly. And there's definitely like I know people who like go broke like in their adult life following the rodeo circuit, because that's like just what they grew up with and that's what they love. Actually, the tow truck driver that let me stay with him in Lewiston when I broke down on the pilgrimage, he used to be a rodeo cowboy, and he just got stuck in Montana on a winter and couldn't make enough money to get out again.
Oh no. That's rough. I mean, it's one thing to choose the place that you're stuck in. It's another to like legitimately just be stuck. You know, like a mental stuck is way different than a crap, I don't have any money.
Yeah.
Oh man. So we kind of covered this too, but I ask everyone just because the name of the podcast is The Modern Squid. On a spectrum of full ATGAT to just full on squidding, where do you kind of put yourself?
I am probably on the ATGAT side of things. Probably not fully ATGAT, because I know a lot of people would be upset. Like I don't ride with a helmet when we're on our property because I never go over like 10 miles per hour. I know it's god awful. So I don't ride with a helmet on the property, but I normally have a jacket or gloves on or something like that. And then anywhere, even if I'm only going to go 2 blocks, especially in the city, I always have gear all the time. And whether that is like the Oxford leggings that are Kevlar and they have armor in them, or if it's my full suit, I always have full face helmet on, always. And I always have gloves on because I feel naked without them. I don't know how people ride without gloves.
Same. So we covered like the serious part of gear. Now for more of the fluff, I guess. How important to you is the way the gear looks?
That's not very important to me.
Yeah.
As long as it's not pink and swirly and sparkly.
Because, you get a variety of opinions. Some people don't care. Some people are like, if it doesn't look good, I probably won't wear it. So it's a necessity.
I mean, like, because like I don't look good in the Aerostitch suit. I don't. But it works. And like the armor fits where it needs to on my body. And that's what's important to me. My like first full suit of not Aerostitch, but of textile gear was like a Tourmaster suit. And that by no stretch of the imagination I could describe as flattering. And that's the suit that I did the pilgrimage in. And so you can't really see most of it. And like the photos, because I don't have a whole lot of photos of me in my gear on that trip because I didn't master the art of the selfie until afterwards. And B, because it's all black. So in photos, it gets super just like black, like just contrasted out in comparison to the background without having to pump up the ISO super high. And when I got the Scorpion suit, I did look at their female version, but it like had pink on it. Like there was swirls embroidered everywhere, and they changed the logo for the women's gear. So it was all in cursive. And I was like, are you kidding me? It didn't even have thigh pockets. And that's like what I loved about the men's version of the suit. Like,
I don't understand why they take women's pockets away.
I don't understand.
It's like, in every aspect. And, every woman I've either dated or been involved with has always complained about the lack of pockets and been super stoked when they find something with pockets. It seems as if it's not even rocket science that a brand should consider women want pockets when they make something for them. I am flabbergasted.
I feel like so much of that is like them not trying to compromise the silhouette of the gear by putting pockets that could become bulky.
Just because you have pockets doesn't mean you have to stick stuff in them, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the silhouette, if someone cared about the silhouette, then they wouldn't put something bulky in the pocket. Like, yeah,
exactly. I know like a couple people made like jokes about my Yosemite suit, like the Scorpion suit that I wear now, that like the tan one, about like the pants looking like some like English majors like military uniform, the ones that like poofed out on the thighs, and before like, because like I always like the thigh pockets in those pants are like my purse essentially. Like everything that has to go with me all the time are in those pockets. Like, and that's why I love that suit, is because of the pockets. Not necessarily like, because it's definitely not the performance in the rain, that's for sure. But that's why I ended up with the men's suit, because the women's version was like so, how do I say this and be politically correct? I don't know. It was too feminine for me. It was too girly, and I didn't like it. I am a person that does not like pink. I do not like sparkles. I do not like swirls. I just want something to look unisex. That's what I want.
I think personally, and as a man, so my opinion means a lot in this scenario. I think it's the cliche girly that seems to bother a lot of the women that I talk to. When it comes to like brands that do make an attempt at women's riding gear. They never make an attempt, unless you're like at Wild or one of the companies that are run by women. Like you never see them making an attempt to make something feminine in a less cliche way.
Yeah, thank you. Much better words.
Oh Well,
Yeah.
I'm with you though in that I don't I want my gear to look good, but at the end of the day, I really care more that it works. And
Yes.
you can see that in the pants I got. I got these riding jeans that make it look like I've got like a diaper hanging in the back of my pants or something because the cut is just so unflattering.
Yeah.
But they work really well. I fell down
Yeah.
once in them. The hip armor is like right in the perfect place. I had no issues at all, no scrapes, no bruises. Like it works beautifully. So I wear it every single time I go out. But they look terrible.
Yes. Yeah. But that's just the pants part. You can stand behind your bike. Nobody needs to say them. Like,
Exactly. The problem is that my super cool jacket is sort of ruined by my let's see how do I put this. I don't really drink beer, so maybe a Scotch belly.
I like it. Yes.
It's like this sleek, almost European-esque. You know how they make motorcycle jackets?
Yes.
They're like
Yeah.
not leather, right?
Yeah.
Like it's made for someone who's got
Athletic
sort of a
fit.
svelte physique. And
Yes.
when you got a bit of a belly, it doesn't really look the same way. So,
Yeah. No. That's also the problem. Like they have like the commercial women's gear. It's made for ladies that don't have curves, don't have a little belly. You know. I like candy. I don't care. I love pasta. I'm
Yeah.
Sicilian. Of course I'm going to eat pasta. I'm never going to give up that. Just
I found out I have a wheat allergy,
oh no.
and I love pasta.
Oh,
I lived in
no.
Italy for 3 years and just developed an absolute passion for pasta. And later on, as I became an adult, I developed some sort of a wheat allergy. Now I can't freaking eat it, and it
Oh my
kills me.
God.
Kills me. It was such a staple of my diet.
Oh.
And I had learned to make different pasta sauces by hand, and that I really loved, and found different pasta that I enjoyed cooking. And now I can't have any of it. I had to relearn different meals for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say like this wheat allergies. That means you can't even eat like gluten-free pasta, can you? Because that's wheat.
So gluten-free is hit or miss. Because what I found is, for instance, oatmeal, right? Oatmeal should be naturally gluten-free and wheat-free, but they're often processed in the same buildings, so it seems to have the most frequent cross-contamination of any food that I try. Because a lot of foods that you eat will say, there's no wheat, but it's processed in a facility that has wheat, it doesn't bother me. But for whatever reason, oatmeal is completely unreliable. I cannot eat oatmeal. Anyway, so yeah, I can try gluten-free things, and 9 times out of 10, if it says gluten-free, I'll be fine. But once in a while I run into something like oatmeal where it's like, no, you're never fine eating oatmeal. But anyway, so Sicilian was how far back? How many generations?
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm 6th generation Bitterroot because like my great grandmother came from Sicily, and depending on who you talk to, our last name used to have 2 T's. She got rid of the T because she wanted to sound more American. And if you listen to my dad, it's because she was hiding from the Sicilian mafia. So it depends on your imagination.
Well, you know what? I heard from a gentleman that I interviewed before that also the immigration people at one point in time, if they wanted to, they could just like spell your name however they wanted.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe they came in and the immigration person was like 1 T. You're out.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, no, the Zitos were one of the first family to be in the Bitterroot Valley, and the Bitterroot was settled like around like 1890s, 1886 or something like that. So we've been in the Bitterroot since like 1896 or something around there.
Are any of your siblings living there?
Gary, my closest brother, is living there right now. 2 of my brothers are still there. Yeah, actually, no. All 3 of my brothers are in the Valley. My sister is in Colorado. I have to think about it because Jason kind of goes all over the place. He's the second oldest. And Like, he's lived in Arizona, he's lived in Florida, he's lived all over the place. So I have to think about it sometimes. He's kind of, he's our resident transient family member.
Well, at the end of the day, then at least you don't have a lot of pressure to go back because everyone else is gone and you're their last chance to have the legacy continue, you know?
No, thankfully my sister has kids. Our eldest brother has kids. I'm not having kids.
Good plan,
Obviously.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Or that's the plan right now, knock on wood. Things always change, but it has always been my intention to never have kids. And if I did get I want to be a mom bug, I will probably adopt, because I would feel too guilty about having my own child when I know that another child needs a home. So
I'm right there. You know, all my I have so many animals and they're all adopted. And,
yes.
you know, I've always said I want one of two things, and this is going to sound kind of horrible. Maybe I shouldn't say, but I either because it's two different aspects of my personality or at work when it comes to children. So it's like I either want to adopt if I ever get that bug too, where I feel like, you know, maybe I do want a kid. Well, I'd really prefer to adopt. The only other way I'd want a kid is if someone knocked on my door one day at 18 or older and said, "Hey, I'm your kid, and I didn't have to raise them, and I don't have to have any guilt about abandoning them." You know what I mean?
That's the best.
Like, my mom never told you that she was pregnant.
Oh my God.
And here I am. And those are the only two scenarios that I want children.
I like part of my motivation, because like children are a lot of work, but also because like watching my siblings trying to take care of their kids, I recognize that at this point in my life, I am an incredibly selfish person. I want to be able to just get up and go whenever I want. And that like, I'm very incredibly lucky to have a significant other that's like, I'm going to go home in a week. Oh, okay. I guess I'll see you when you get back. But I can't do that if I had kids. And I'm pretty sure I would do it anyway. So I'd be an awful mom.
Or you'd have to get like, I don't know how many car seats if you have, you know, like let's say you have twins, you'd have to get like a double car seat for the bike, like double pillions. Is that what they do? And, you know, like little baby helmets or whatever. And
hope
it's not illegal in whatever state you're riding through.
So I recognize that I'm incredibly selfish. Like the only reason that our cats are still alive is because like Jonathan and I split duties taking care of them. For the record, taking care of a horse and cows is so much easier than taking care of like dogs and cats.
Really?
Yes.
But I mean, scooping litter, I mean, it's so much smaller than scooping like horse crap, right?
Well, that depends if your animals are free range or if they're in a stable all the time.
Okay.
Being redneck, our stable is like a shack lean-to. The horses only go in there like when the weather is terrible. They spend all the rest of their time out in the field. Like, and so that's just like natural compost.
Well, it's mostly grass, right? I mean, their poop.
Yeah, like it's fertilizer.
Yeah.
So you don't go out and scoop up their poop and that kind of stuff. And in the summertime, you know, you don't have to feed them all that much because they're grazing, as long as you have enough property, obviously.
Yeah.
And so like all the work is in the wintertime, and I'm cooped up anyway. It's not like I'm going to be out and about, like going all the other places. Like in the wintertime, I'm cooped up anyway. So I have time to take care of them. And that's when they need to be fed hay and taken care of. Obviously like haying season is a whole other thing. If you can't afford to buy your own hay, buy somebody else's hay. So you have to make your own hay. So then haying is a whole nother thing.
See, I'm just demonstrating my ignorance when it comes to farm life then, because the closest I've come to working on farms is I used to do corn detasseling when I lived in Illinois, and that's the closest I've gotten. So haying then, now did you guys buy your hay or did you do the haying?
We do the hay.
You did the haying, wow.
Yes.
Did you do the rolls?
I think there's only a
couple.
we do squares. Okay. Dad did buy oh my God, what is the word? Swather, not swather. He bought a round baler at one point because he couldn't buck bales by himself. And it was before he was actually telling mom when he was going to go out and buck bales so that he could have help. Mind-blowing possibility, having help, because you ask for it. Anyway, he bought a round baler so that he could like lift it with the tractor, but then the tractor went shit, so he went back to square bales again. And because like the round baler, like the tension on the twine has to be perfect for those bales to like be bound up the right way without falling apart when you pick them up again. So there's still a lot of moving parts on a square baler, but it's a whole lot less sensitive, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess the stakes are a little bit lower too because the square bales are quite a bit smaller, unless there's different size round ones that I don't know about. But all the round ones I've seen are huge.
Yeah, like square bales come in a variety of sizes. We don't do the massive commercial square bales. Like our square bales are like 200 pounds. They're not that bad. Okay. They're the ones that you would see at like cliche like ranches or farmers markets where you just sit on them. Those kind of bales. Yeah.
So I guess let me ask you this, and you might be getting to it, but just out of curiosity, I've seen hay bales where they're completely brown, like dry out looking hay. And then I've seen some where there's like some green to it still. Is there a preferred way to do it, or there's just different purposes for the different hays, or?
So it's a different kind of hay.
Okay.
And like, this is part of like my education that happened when I was really little. So I don't remember all of it. And it's not stuff that I have to think about all the time. I just go and buck bales. So, but like there's alfalfa hay bales, and then there's other kinds of hay bales. My dad is somewhere cringing because I can't think of the other kinds. But like, that is also like a part of the like color differentiation, but also because like a lot of people who are getting into ranching now who don't know, or who just get started like haying and it's their first time, they don't realize like how much that hay needs to like dry before you bale it. Because like it needs to be in the sweet spot between wet and like totally dried out and dead. It needs to be somewhere in the middle for you to be able to bale it so it doesn't get caught in the machine, because if it's too wet, it gets caught in the machine, it gunks everything up, it's bad. But if it's too dry, it won't bunch together properly, and so it just ends up falling apart. So it's like a terrible thing. You have to like wait until it's just the right consistency to bale it, so you don't have a whole lot of issues. Of course, that's not always possible. Like if it's going to rain, you can't bale wet hay. So if it's like closer to the greener side, still wet, like they'll probably bale it to avoid having to bale it after it rains or something like that. Like the downside of haying is that it's so controlled by what the weather is doing. On one hand, the way that it grows, like if you have a shit season and the hay isn't any good, then you're kind of out of luck. You have to buy somebody else's hay. But like, and also just like, you know, if it rains, then you can't bale for like another like week or something until the hay is dried out. And by then it's probably dried out too much. And it's so much fun.
So what do you think was the worst part about working on a ranch?
Worst part?
The part that you just enjoyed the least, that like maybe you get up in the morning and be like, oh, it's that day again.
I feel like my siblings would have like so many more complaints than I do, because like they were forced to do so much more work than I was as a kid. And by the time that I was old enough to do all the work that they had to, while I was a child, our herd had been slashed to like 12 cows and we didn't have to do as much anymore. When I was a kid, we had like 80 head and we had like 120 acres. And then my grandmother got in a lawsuit with the neighbor because the neighbor was like, well, my property line should be like 3 feet this way onto your property. And blah, blah, blah. And so she had to, and nobody won because she had to sell the property they were fighting over to pay the lawyer. And a ton of cows, and like going from 80 head to 12 in the span of like 2 to 3 years is a lot. So by the time that I was old enough to do all of the extra like tasks and like stuff that my siblings had to do when I was a kid because I was too little to do them. We didn't have enough cows for me to bother doing it anymore. So,
and anything you did, the volume was so low comparatively that it probably wasn't as miserable. So
exactly, yeah. Every year we would have to cut cows, which is like where you cut the steers, so they can't breed, so they just become burger essentially. I know that Rosanna hated that because like one year she was standing in the wrong spot, and when Dad cut one of the steers, she got smacked in the face with his balls.
See, this is what happens if you don't pay enough attention to what's going on.
She's like standing like back over here, and she knows like Dad cuts and throws.
Oh no.
I pick on my sister a lot because like it's just too easy. She's older than me. It's still too easy.
There's not a lot of people in the world that I can think of that can say that someone threw bull balls and hit them in the face. You know?
Yes. I think when I was a little kid, I didn't enjoy haying very much because like it was a lot of work. And even for me, like like when I was like 8, 7, when I was actually physically able to start lifting bales and that kind of stuff, we would trade out, like Dad would let me get back in the truck and steer when I got really tired, and then I would like come back out and buck bales again. But that is very arduous, especially when you're doing enough hay to support that big of a herd. And also because like the one year we were doing it and my sister put me on the edge of the tail of the truck and I was backwards and we hit a bump, and she knew it would happen. We hit a bump and I fell off backwards into a cow pie, fresh cow pie.
It broke your fall. You shouldn't be angry, you know? Like that probably saved you from serious injury, and now you're besmirching the cow pie.
I'm besmirching my sister who stuck me on the tail instead of letting me sit on the wheel well.
Oh man. So what do you think is your favorite memory then about working on the ranch?
I mean, like most of my memories of working on the ranch as a kid are like a weird like montage, you know, like when you think about an era in your life and you're just like a bunch of like little flashes of tiny moments happen in your head. Yeah, like that's the way like it is for me when I think about it. I mean, like cows were my first friends. I didn't have other friends my own age until I was in 2nd grade. Like I just wouldn't talk to anybody. I didn't want to make friends. I went to school. I did what I was told, and I would like kind of like blinders on the whole time. And the only reason I even made a friend in 2nd grade is because her name is April. She's still one of my best friends. She forced her way into my life. Like, I used to like run out to the tire swing and I would just spin on it by myself all day, like all recess, and I wouldn't let anybody else get on. And one recess I went out and she was already on it. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I spent like 2 recesses, because this happened like 3 times in a row. She was already at my tire swing. And the 3rd day, after like spending like 2 days, like wandering around the recess, like by myself, like not having anything to do for an hour, like came back and I was like, can I get on with you? And she's like, yeah, you want to share? Yeah. Like, she's like very outgoing. And so that's how I made my first friend, because she forced herself into my life. Like,
yeah.
But before that, like the cows were like my confidants. Like I would used to go and sit in the middle of the field, and cows are very, very curious creatures. And if you're around them enough, they accept you as part of the herd. Like my dad likes to joke, we don't have cows, we have pets. Because Dad has them trained that he brings out a white sack. They think it's cow cake, so they come immediately. Like you don't have to shake the sack, nothing. You just come out with a white sack, and they're like, "Oh, treats!" Like, cow cake is like oats and molasses and all the good things. It's like candy for cows.
Yeah.
And they're so spoiled. Anyway, I used to go out and sit in the middle of the field. So after a little bit, like they would come back up and snip on you, and they'll rub on you as long as you don't like move or make any sudden noises or anything like that. So then I would just start telling them stories. And so like, yeah, cows are my first best friends. I have a very special place in my heart for cows. Coming across people who are afraid of them because they're huge is just hilarious to me.
Yeah. So do you eat beef?
I do, yeah.
Okay. And my mom, so I asked because my mother once raised a turkey, and she called him Tom the Turkey. Everyone can guess what happened. But at her age, she didn't realize that, all the turkeys that were raised in I think it's my great aunt or something's farm would get eaten. And so she'd gotten a lot of praise about how well she had raised this turkey. And so he became turkey dinner that year. And my mother was devastated. And my understanding is that she wouldn't eat turkey for years because she'd made friends with Tom the Turkey as she was raising him and couldn't bear, to eat turkey for a while after that. So, I was just curious if you're bonding with the cows at that age and like left a similar impression, or if it was like you were surrounded so much that it had become routine, that maybe the cows would go out for slaughter.
I think that my family did an excellent job of teaching us where our food came from. And I think that like you said, like people don't realize like where their food is coming from. Like she didn't realize it was going to be food. And that's like so much like with all the city kids that I have met, like they have no connection to where their food comes from. But I have always been hyper aware of like, that cow in the field that we raised, we put all of the energy into making sure that it has a good life and that it's healthy and that it's happy. And then in exchange, they give us nutrients, and that's like the equivalent exchange. And I think part of that is because like I used to go hunting a lot. Like I like watched my brothers like, gut deer, and like we have amazing jerky afterwards,
Oh yeah.
Like that direct like response of like understanding immediately at a very young age what death is and where your meat comes from. I think is all the difference really. And like, that's not to say that like I am heartless. Like I love our animals, like, and I like something that I couldn't get across to like the people that I met in art school that just hated me because I was a ranch kid is that like, I don't agree with feedlots. I like when I saw one for the first time, like actually coming to Portland, like when we to tour my school was the first time I saw a feedlot in my whole life. And I cried, like could not stop crying. It could not believe that they had trapped all those cows into such a small area, no grass. It's all mud. All I can think about is like the hoof rot that they must have and how uncomfortable it is. And like, they just never get to experience what it's like to be free. It's a lot of things. And I think that's like a huge difference, like understanding like where your food comes from and that it's sustainably sourced and that those animals had a good life. They weren't killed before they needed to be. We never butchered animals unless we needed food. And the other animals that we sold like to market was to keep the ranch running so the rest of the animals could have a good life, And most of the animals that we sold either went to improve the bloodline of somebody else's herd or something like that, because we never like sold directly to like the butcher. When we did have to butcher an animal for like so we would have more meat in the freezer, like I think we had a deal with the meat locker that like they would take half of it and they sell it in the front of the meat processing area, Hamilton Pack. They sell it in the front to people who don't have animals, so they can come in and they know that like where those animals came from, and like they don't have like a ton of growth hormones. They weren't grain fed, which is incredibly unhealthy for the animal and for the person consuming the meat.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to take away from any of the things that you just said, but they also taste way better when they're grass-fed.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely tastes better. I first, when I moved to Portland and I ran out of burger, I brought a chest of burger with me so I would have food. And when I ran out of burger, I wanted to make spaghetti and I went to the grocery store. I never bought meat at a grocery store before. and brought it home, and it was 80%, and I was sick, so sick for a week. And my mom is like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, you need to buy the leanest meat that you possibly can, because our cattle are Angus Limousine Cross. It's like the leanest cut you can get. Like there isn't a whole lot of fat. And on top of that, they're all grass fed, not grain fed. So there just isn't a whole lot of fat. And on top of that, like if the animal is grain fed and it's fed a lot of growth hormones, those hormones stay in the fat of the animal. So,
well, not according to the industry that's interested in selling more of those cows.
Yeah,
I know. While the farmer's market was still going on and pre our current situation, I was trying to get as much meat as I could from this company called Double Check Farms out here. And they're amazing for a number of reasons. One of which is that they don't kill any of the predators on their property.
Oh, yeah.
So they see, if a rattlesnake or any other predator kills one of their cattle, they just see it as a, part of
selection.
Being in the desert with their cattle. And, there's so much that happens to damage the ecology of a place if you take out all the predators. So for me, it was a really big incentive. I paid way more for meat from there than anywhere else, but I didn't mind. Number one, it tasted better. Number two, they were being good stewards of the land that they were on. So I felt good buying the meat from them, and I can't wait for all this stuff to kind of clear up so I can go back to getting meat from them, because now I try to buy like bison or chicken or something, because the regular beef you get from the store is just,
oh my God, it's so bad.
I don't enjoy it.
So bad. And also what is mind-blowing is it's still terrible meat, but the price has doubled since the pandemic. Like burger, like 90% burger used to be $3.99 a pound. It's $8.99 a pound here now.
Wow.
It's insane.
Well, I know trucking prices are going way up.
Yes.
And then a lot of the meat processing facilities were shockingly bad environments to work, especially during a pandemic. And so a bunch of people got sick. So
yeah. The meat processing plant that was like in Ohio, and they had to dump all that pork.
Oh my gosh.
All, like just
Yeah. Well, now that we've depressed everyone with our talk about the terrible lives that these cattle are going through, let's switch.
It's just like an example of how important it is to know where your food comes from.
It is, but some people, what kills me is some people get they get information and they sort of take the wrong message from it. Like the people that you were interacting in your art school that now think that every single person who's in the meat industry is the same as these terrible, terrible companies that are just sort of taking life and turning it into a factory. Which is not at all the same.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, on a more positive note, I love your shirt. Where's that from?
Thank you. It says support badass babes. I made it specifically for companies. Actually, her brand name is Support Badass Babes. You can search her on Instagram. She makes stuff like this, and part of the proceeds from like all the stuff that she sells goes to support events that celebrate women writers and efforts to bring more women writers into the forefront of like the media and that kind of stuff. So I know that she supports like events and brands that like are making women's gear and that kind of stuff. Her name is Carrie. I love her. She's amazing. I made a design for her like a couple years ago. I need to make another one for her. She has a couple of other designs as well that other artists have made for her, but she's super cool.
Well, that one is really cool. So we talked about whether or not big companies have, a role to play in getting women to ride. Where do you think is the most likely place to have the biggest impact? Not what should, but what do you think is the most likely to have the biggest impact on women riding?
Oh my God. That's so hard. It's like, it's mostly hard because like all the women that I know who ride, their motivations for learning to ride were so different. Like not one story is the same. So like trying to figure out like what would be the most effective way to like get riding, like get more women riding. Is that like the question?
Yeah. I mean, because again, big brands, we were talking about earlier, big brands having a responsibility to kind of try to get more women to ride, not just because, it's good business, but because, it doesn't make any sense, in my mind, even ethically, to kind of focus on one gender, really. But then, whether or not we should or they should or shouldn't is kind of aside the point, because I think what should happen and what's most likely to happen are different. So I guess what I'm asking is, like, what do you think is the most likely vehicle to get more women to ride?
God, like representation is like so important, because like if you have more representation, like in mainstream media, big budget movies, if you have more representation of women riding and enjoying riding in it, not just being like, I use this bike to do a stunt. Like if you actually have more representation of women riding, then it becomes more normalized in our culture, which then makes it more of an open gateway for more women to start riding. Because I feel like a lot of like the hesitancy of a lot of women to ride is because the like culture around like the way that we raise girls in general is that like girls should be safe. You should do things safe. You don't do that. It's dangerous. And like there's a lot of studies like you know, like if a boy climbs a tree, like the parents are less likely to be, oh my God, don't hurt yourself. If a girl tries to climb a tree, oh my God, don't do that. You're going to break something. Like you can't, that's not safe. So like normalizing it in our culture that like, yeah, like women ride motorcycles. That's a normal thing. It's not abnormal. It's not unsafe. It's not like extreme. Like, and I think like just having a girl on a bike doing a stunt in a movie isn't doing that, because you're immediately putting the motorcycle in the most extreme place that it possibly could be. Yeah. Mainstream media, I think, is like the place that's most likely to reach the most amount of eyeballs. People who don't have family that ride, people who don't know anyone who rides, like, and of course that's the easiest thing for me to say, because I only knew that motorcycles exist because of Grease 2.
Yeah.
Because like there aren't a whole lot of motorcycles in Montana. Like
Well, you got such a long riding season. I'm actually a little surprised there's not more, right?
And I like as a kid would never have connected like four-wheelers and like three-wheelers and that kind of stuff to recreationally riding a motorcycle. Like that was never in my head. And even like my grandpa like saying when I was like a tiny child, like, oh, I have this bike, you can play with it. Like I only got to see my grandpa like a handful of times when I was a kid. So like that never really stuck around in my head. So like really the thing that made me be like, oh, motorcycles are a thing. Cool. Motorcycles are a thing. Was Grease 2. Like arguably best/worst musical.
You're talking to a guy who hates musicals, except I was a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and so they had a musical episode of Buffy that I still to this day think is fantastic, and it's the only good musical that exists. So I mean,
but
I have
that's my thing though. Like mainstream media, you're reaching a much wider audience of people who would not have been exposed to like that kind of culture otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I have my own opinion, and I want to get yours first. But this
Okay.
is what I'm thinking, and it's I've only been formulating it for a few, like since last week, basically. So
Okay.
take it with a grain of salt, obviously. But a conversation I had with Moto Bob for our interview last week is what really sparked this, because he was telling me that he runs into so many kids nowadays that say they want to be YouTubers when they grow up. Right? Like it used to be, movie stars or astronauts or whatever. And now it's YouTuber.
Yeah.
And when you start to think back on the struggle the cable companies are having with so many people cutting the cord, as they call it, and just moving over to things like Netflix and YouTube for their media consumption. I actually think it's going to be YouTube that is the most likely place for young women to get exposed to motorcycles as a thing,
Totally.
assuming that the algorithm at some point throws a motorcycle in front of them.
Yes.
Because that's the downside
assuming
of
that their
YouTube.
search terms go outside of their normal watch stuff.
Or they go through the YouTube rabbit hole where you start like clicking on videos and then it like suggests another one and you click on it and then another one. The next thing you know, you're watching videos that have absolutely nothing to do with anything you've ever thought about in life, and you wonder to yourself, how did I get on this video? And if anyone walked in on you watching that video, they'd be like, why are you watching a video on training monkeys? And it's like, I don't know, I was watching Amanda Zito's latest video, and then it's like 12 video suggestions later, here I am. But I actually think it's going to be people like you and Her Two Wheels and Doodle, when you guys start building a backlog, even more of a backlog of videos, and young girls kind of coming up on YouTube as their first media experience versus like you and I probably, I don't know how old you are. I mean, I'm assuming we're within like 5 years.
28 for the record.
Oh, never mind. We grew up differently. So like, the cable was like the big thing. Cable and TV over the air was kind of like the way everyone got their media. But now, my niece, she's 3, and she can pick up one of these things and like navigate to her YouTube shows right now. So she's already like, she doesn't care about TV. She cares about YouTube.
Yeah.
And anyway,
I like grew up in like the 50-50, and also growing up in a rural area means that like I have an experience like 5 to 10 years behind the rest of my peers who grew up in a more urban environment. That's another thing that was super fun to learn when I moved here. What do you mean you didn't grow up with records? I don't understand.
Your TV didn't look like furniture? What are you talking about?
But like cable was like a big part of my childhood. We only had 3 stations when I was growing up, and I only got exposed to like satellite TV when I got to spend time with like my other grandmother, because she always had satellite TV. Otherwise it was cable, and it was only 3 channels that we could manage to get on the hill.
I think that's actually over the air TV, not cable.
Is it not cable? Oh, right. Over the air TV. The rabbit ears.
Exactly. And that was I think they called it broadcast. So it's called broadcast.
Broadcast. TV. Okay, cool.
This reminds me of a class I went to where the people didn't know what a touch tone phone was. They didn't know dial tone versus touch tone. Like they just knew that a phone was a phone, but phones have buttons. I don't understand. What do you mean the buttons for what kind of phone there is?
And like I also got the wonderful experience of trying to access the internet through Juno, through a landline. So you got to experience the wonderful noises that come along with that, and how slow it was. It took 2 hours to load one photo. So I've got to experience a very broad range of what the life was like before the internet, and before I had ready access to the internet all the time. And also like I'm pretty like, I don't know, I would call myself tech savvy. I feel like I learned stuff about technology pretty quickly, in comparison to some other people. So I've got like the best of both worlds, kind of, because I can remember what it was like without the internet, without like when I spent most of my time outside. I remember what it was like not having a computer. I remember what it's like having to share the phone with 8 people. And having to entertain yourself. What a terrible concept.
Right. I mean, you've got to wonder how much the lack of distraction played in developing your imagination, because it's one thing to develop the skills to draw. It's a whole nother to have the imagination to come up with a concept for that drawing.
Yeah.
anyway.
Yes, no, 100%. And like so much of art is still derivative. There is no, like, I am of the school of thought that there is nothing original. Everything that you make is a derivative of like 1,000 other things that you have seen before.
Are we twins? Because I feel too. I feel like I'm the only one, especially because I do photography a lot, right? And then there's constant debate about who's ripping off whose photo shoot or whatever. And it's like, guys, no one is coming up with anything new. There's only so many ways the human body moves and so many different places you can put it. Like,
exactly. Like the most original thing that you can bring to the work is your perspective, and that's it.
Exactly.
And that's why, like, I don't get upset when like people like they'll like copy a topic or something that I did or like anything like that, because like it doesn't matter, because everybody's gonna say something different. Like, you know, unless you're copying my script word for word, there's no way for you to present that media in the same way that I did. Like, who cares?
Not to mention, if you follow any of the YouTube gurus, one of the things they tell people is go look and see what videos in your genre that you're interested in making videos in, like what is working out there, and try to do something similar, you know, because if you're having trouble coming up with concepts, well, don't reinvent the wheel. Look to see what people want and give them what they want.
Yeah, and there's like literally only so many things you could do in the motorcycle niche. Like if you're trying to make content every single week, there's only so many things you can do, especially like when it's not riding season and you have to do talking head videos. There's only so much stuff that you can like set up and do, really, without having to like go out and do super crazy shit, like go to tuk-tuk in the winter, which like people are crazy.
Well, I mean, I don't understand when does riding season end? It seems to go on forever here.
Rub it in, would ya? Technically, if like riding season doesn't properly end in Portland, you can ride in Portland year round. You just have to have really good waterproof gear. And I think there's only like 2 or 3 days a year in Portland where it actually gets cold enough to be icy so that it's not safe to ride. But you can't really go outside of the metropolitan area, because then you're getting into like either the Cascades or the coastal range. So you are stuck in town.
Sorry, I'm not trying to ignore you.
No, you're fine. I realize that like you have another interview to do today.
I do, but someone keeps ringing my doorbell, and I have cameras, so I was just looking to see who's ringing my doorbell. Because if it's my girlfriend, she went paddleboarding today, and I just wanted to make sure that she wasn't like, hey, I need help carrying something in. But it's just some dude trying to leave me a flyer, so I don't mind letting him just kind of hang out at my front door.
I need to get one of those for Dad so they can put it on the gate.
Oh my god, I'm telling you, it's such a game changer, because especially in an election year, you know, it's like you get so many people calling and visiting the house, and if you're trying to avoid people in a pandemic, the less you can open your door when you don't need to, the better. You know? At least in my opinion.
No, totally. Like I'm grateful that this house is like a nice like see-through screen, not screen door. It's a glass door. And so like open the main door, and if I see them, I'm like, hey dude, you know, I've done door to door before. I appreciate your time, but I'm not going to listen to you today. And then I close the door.
Oh, you don't have sprinklers that you just turn on and get them off your porch? No,
I wish.
I'm kidding.
Because I feel for them. I've had to do door to door before to pay the bills, and it sucks. But at the same time,
I mean, I don't have any animosity towards anyone ringing my bell. It's just that again, it's a pandemic, so for me, it's
counterintuitive.
Yeah, and my door's not glass. I mean, I can look out the window or whatever, but it's so much more convenient to, like, if I'm in the other room watching Netflix or something, or if I'm here talking to you, I don't have to get up and go look. I can just pick up my phone and be like, oh, I don't have to be concerned with that, you know, and then move on. Plus, my bike is parked right there, and so this camera also covers my bike. That's kind of
important.
Yeah. So I always want to know who's like standing next to my bike.
Yeah. I'm grateful that this house has a garage. I'm also grateful, like, we live on a dead end that's incredibly safe. And like, well, I used to live with my grandpa, and my grandpa didn't have a garage, so the bikes were always parked in front of his house, and not in a particularly nice neighborhood. It's becoming gentrified now, so it's a whole lot safer than it was. But somebody's bike got stolen literally kitty corner from our house, like while both my bikes were sitting in front of our house, and it's very scary.
Yeah.
And every time I would come home from a trip, even if I was exhausted, I couldn't like leave anything on my bike. Everything had to come in immediately. So that sucked. And because living here with the garage, to just like come in, I know all of our neighbors, and being like essentially like 2-3 streets removed from any kind of major thoroughfare means like nobody comes down here unless they live here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that I can leave my bike in the driveway, like loaded, and it's fine. But also like I can pull into our driveway with my bike loaded and just like worry about unpacking it later.
Yeah.
It's been like 4 weeks since the end of that trip. My bike still isn't unpacked.
Well, it's all about priorities. I mean, I'm sure the last thing you want to do is interact with the bike in that way right now, after that long of a trip. I actually have a garage. I've got a 2-car garage, but a series of unfortunate events have made the garage non-functional for putting things into it. So the door was kind of like, it wouldn't always go down all the way, and it would come back up. And people were kind of like prying them open in the neighborhood and stuff. So I put the lock on it. Yeah. And my girlfriend didn't know that I had put the lock on the garage door, and she needed to go out one day, and she didn't look. So she just hit the button to make it rise. And it's an old enough unit that it doesn't like stop based on resistance. I think some of them now, if it encounters
there's an automatic, like it's kind of like an elevator. Yeah.
Mine doesn't have that, and so it just like ripped a bunch of stuff off the track and broke things. And so I was able to get it closed and get it locked again, but it doesn't actually function to come up and down. So
no.
The garage that used to have our 2 cars in it is now more of a storage space until I can get that thing fixed. So
and like garage doors are not cheap.
No. And
just the mechanism itself is wow.
Yeah, it stinks, especially in Arizona, because even though the garage doesn't get cool, it's really nice to have your cars in the shade at the bare minimum, because
they're out of the direct sunlight.
Yeah, it's not quite as hot inside the cars when you can put them in the garage. But
yeah,
it is what it is, and it will fix it eventually. For now, my bike goes on my front porch right in front of the camera.
Yeah, that's a good place for it.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really do appreciate you talking to me. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, but I was like, the podcast is still too new. Let me wait until I've got a few more followers before I go and start messaging, you and like Megan Stark and stuff. But then I rethought it, and I was like, you know what? If I want to talk to them, let me just shoot them a message. If they don't want to talk to me, they'll just say no.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the worst thing that people can say is no. It's always more worth it to ask.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I've heard no a lot. I'm okay with it. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed making it. If you'd like to hear more from Amanda Zito, you can find her on Instagram at Blind Thistle. You can find her on YouTube at As the Magpie Flies. And as always, there will be a page added to my website, themodernsquid.com, with those links. Have a good one.